Hi, Stephen. I'm 30 years old. And about 1 week ago, I was listening to one of your conversations with a woman about her childhood. As you were asking her questions, I found myself pausing the video and reflecting on my own life. What started as listening to an interview turned into what felt like a therapy session for myself. One of the strongest memories that came up was when my parents were getting divorced. I was around 8 years old and remember desperately wanting them to stay together. My mom asked once, she asked me what I wanted for my birthday. I told her I wanted her and dad to get back together. Looking back, I think I unconsciously interpreted their divorce as evidence that I wasn't enough. I wasn't lovable enough, not convincing enough, not important enough, rather than accepting that I had no control over what my parents chose to do. I think I made it about me. Another memory that surfaced was when I was very young. My dad was sitting at the kitchen table reading a newspaper on the weekend morning. I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. I was in a happy, playful mood and looking for connection. I tried to get his attention while he was reading the newspaper, and he snapped at me aggressively. Looking back, I think I experienced moments like that as rejection of myself. I didn't have the maturity to understand that he was flawed, he was distracted, and emotionally unavailable. Instead, I interpreted that as meaning that I wasn't important enough to receive his attention and affection. Over the past week, I've cried more than I have in years. I found myself grieving the past, oscillating between anger and almost disbelief or amazement for some of the things that happened. I've also felt compassion for my younger self who just wanted love, connection, and family, and I interpreted adult problems as evidence that something was wrong with me. What I've started noticing is that this pattern seems to show up in my adult life as well. Just like a more recent example, I recently joined a band, and I noticed that if like my ideas get ignored or rejected or met with indifference, I experience it emotionally as something much bigger than the situation itself. Intellectually, I understand that people have different priorities in the band. They'd have, different tastes and opinions, but emotionally, it almost touches the same nerve, like the old message that says, you're not enough. The same thing can happen when I receive criticism. If someone says a guitar part isn't working, like just in the band, um, part of me experiences that information as my value rather than information about the music itself. Um, this sort of thing kind of shows up in other areas of my life, of course, outside the band. Um, but over the years, I've struggled with addiction, including periods of significant drug use. And I've begun wondering how much of that was an attempt to cope with emotional pain, feelings of inadequacy, and a need for approval and validation. The realization I've had is that for much of my life, for much of my life, I may have unconsciously tied my self worth to my ability to influence people, convince people, gain approval, achieve success, and get people to respond positively to me. Whether through business, social media, relationships, music, or other accomplishments, there seems to be a recurring theme of me trying to prove that I'm enough. My main question is, how do I continue healing from this realization in a healthy way? How do I build a life, relationships, music, business, and just also a future family from a place of self respect and self worth rather than from a need to earn people's approval. And then also, I plan on marriage and children, so I'd love your thoughts on like choosing a healthy partner, how to kind of vet a partner that would be quality so that I can build a better family than what I had.
Uh, Appreciate that. It's very direct. I'm glad to hear that your emotions are kicking in. Tell me a little bit more, if you could, about what happened with your parents' divorce. So your father was snappy when you were 4 or 5. They got divorced when you were 8. What was your experience of the marriage through that process?
The like specifically around the time that they got divorced.
Well, yeah, I guess just your experience of the marriage as far as you can remember it.
Um, I, the divorce was very. It was a battle. Like they, it was illegal. Everything was like lawyers, and I remember like sometimes like it was just constant. It was like being in the middle of a battlefield. If I'm with if I'm with my dad, oftentimes, like sometimes he's talking to somebody on the phone and like he's talking about it, and sometimes he's communicating with like his lawyer probably or something like that. But it was just constant. Like they were just like at war, and yeah, I think like yesterday I just had this thought. Like I think they definitely like lost sight of like we there came a point, or I don't think there was ever a point where they really thought like, okay, what is like, how do we handle this in a way that's like best for our kids? That was like, I don't know if that thought ever came across them. I think it was like they were just at war, and yeah, I don't know where else.
You haven't mentioned much about your mom.
Um, she would. I mean, um, I think she. Um, I guess it's just like history. Like, so I have a brother and a half sister. So she came into marriage with my dad with a daughter, and um, I had I have like a vivid memory of like laying in bed with my mother. I was probably like 12 years old or something. I think we were watching some like Netflix show, and um, she thought I was asleep. So she thought I was asleep next to her, and she was on the phone with somebody. I don't know who it was. And she was basically telling this person a story about when she was getting divorced with my dad. And during the very beginning of the divorce or like separation, I don't know like when they filed paperwork specifically, but when they like initially really separated, um, my dad, he moved out of the house. So my mom kept the house with us. My dad moved out of the house. He moved just close by. Um, and my mom was telling this person, um, essentially, she knew at some point, like pretty soon, within probably a few months, she realized, like, oh, I can't afford this house, even with the child support, even with whatever checks she was getting from my dad. Um, there was no way she was going to be able to like support the house that my dad had purchased for the family. And so she got back together with my dad. So like they started going on dates. And essentially she was on the phone and she was telling this person, like, I think the underlying message was like, I'm so clever and bad. Like I'm so cunning and clever. I got back with this man just so I could essentially like get out of this house situation. Like I tricked him, like, and so that way she kind of like relieved herself of the burden of basically like having to pay for the house. So I think she's just like, I think that shows you like maybe a little insight into just her character. Like she's um can be very fake, can be very, you know, like I don't think she was thinking like what's the virtuous thing to do here. I think she just kind of rolls, does whatever she has to do to make it work for her.
Okay. And what happened after the divorce? You said it was a real battle. And how did you know that at the time? I'm not disagreeing with you, of course. I just want to understand what you saw and how you experienced it.
Um, I mean, the how I experienced it was, I guess, like when your mom and dad, again, just like the example of like you're just a kid, you're there, and then like your parents on the phone and they're raising their voice. They're like just really upset basically about the divorce situation, whatever it is, if they're talking about some lawyer thing or some child support thing. That was like a really big issue where like my mom, she would say like, well, if your dad would pay his child support and like, so like um she would say that often, especially like more early on as they were getting that stuff figured out. There was like a maybe 2 year period where that was like something we probably heard all the time. And then um how did I know it was a battle? Just uh yeah, I mean, just they would always they lost contact eventually, like everything went through lawyers. So um from the age like maybe from the age of 12 to 16 or 10, maybe I was 10 to 16, honestly I don't know exactly. But the beginning phases, it was much more brutal, much more like I think I saw a lot more of just like emotions flaring. Um, Sometimes directly, like I said, mom would be like, if your dad would pay his child support and then dad would also like I mean still to this day, like I think accidentally he'll make comments about like how evil mom is. Um, my mom is. And anyway, the basically like once I was 16, I think from the age of maybe 14 and a half to 16, my mom went through a process. She started dating a guy, um, and a black guy. And anyway, they got married. He moved in with us. And then once I was like 16, they actually ended up moving. I think my mom and her husband at the time, they've been divorced. They got divorced since then. But I think it was a mixture of like they they both knew that my brother and I would much prefer just to be with our dad. Um, Living with her husband was like never affectionate towards us at all, and we hated him. Like we hated everything about him. He was never like physical or anything in any major way. Maybe there was like one or two times where there was a little bit of physicality, but anyway, they moved away to another state pretty far away when I was 16, and I lost touch with her for a few years. Um, since then, we reconnected. Me and my mother reconnected maybe 5 years ago, and we talk like once a month.
And do you know much about why she divorced the second husband?
Um, yeah, it's actually as far as like specific details, no. But I did the first time. It's kind of interesting. First time I reconnected with her after not speaking to her for like 4 years, like from the age of 16 to 20. We didn't talk at all, and then we reconnected. And then maybe a year after we had initially reconnected, so I was maybe 21 or something like that, I went out to visit her with my sister and her small baby at the time. And anyway, we were sitting, like we were getting dinner, and the topic kind of came up because they were actually still technically married at the time. They were technically married, but I think, I don't know this situation, what was going on, but he wasn't there. Um, so I think I recall her saying like, yeah, he would leave sometimes for like months at a time. I think for work, could be wrong. Um, but anyway, she was clearly, like, the way she was talking about the situation, it clearly was not something she was like excited and enthusiastic about. And I don't know if she said this then, but like basically all the details she's given me is like he was a bad man. He did bad things. And I think she might have said that even at the table, like, he's just bad, and it's so bad. And I just told her, like, at dinner, um, I was like, why don't you just leave? Like, I asked her that question, and apparently that like really struck a chord with her. And I get well, I asked her that question, why don't you just leave? And then she I don't know what she said, but the way she retells the story to me, I asked her, "Hey, why don't you just leave then?" And then she said something in response, and then I said, "No, that's an excuse. Why don't you just figure out a way to leave?" And then she said something, and I said, "No, that's an excuse." So apparently that like made her apparently that was an impactful experience for her, and she ended up applying to jobs. She got a job in another city, and now she's able to be independent away from him. She filed divorce papers with him, and that's kind of the gist of that.
But she didn't specify in what way he was bad.
No.
Okay. It's a little confusing as to why she would pursue that relationship, but let's just go with what you know. And what happened with your father after the divorce?
He started dating a he started dating he's been with the same girlfriend now for like 15 years or something. He had one other girlfriend, um, but he dated basically two girls total, but the one he's currently been with, they've been together 15 years or something like that. Uh, his girlfriend, they have a couple kids, so we kind of grew up around them a little bit. Me and my brother grew up around her kids, and w- it definitely, the divorce definitely like shook his life. I've already mentioned like the emotional stuff, like, but yeah, once my mom was out of the house, like I think she was a stay at home mom. She like she cooked for the most part. She like kept up the house for the most part. So like dad's house became just like a little bit of more of a just run wild. Everything was a mess. Um, he's a very like work focused guy, so he just handled his work, and then his house was like a wreck. But yeah,
Okay. And tell me a little bit about your living arrangements after they got divorced.
mainly I was with mom, um, especially at the beginning. I think I was only with dad every other weekend, um, or something like that, or maybe even less. Um, but it was definitely a fight for my dad to get more time with us. I think later on we transitioned to like every Wednesday I was with dad, and then I think every other weekend. He would also kind of later on, as things emotionally and like legally kind of settled into place, and that's just my perception of it. I don't know like exactly the specifics of everything that was going on, but he would like show up to the bus stop and like bring me and my brother donuts, and like it would be cold in the state that we lived in. It was quite cold in the winters, so like I appreciated the heck out of that. Looking back though, like as I'm saying it, I know a huge motivator was likely um like I think when you're in divorce courts, there is some element of like, you know, I'm the parent that showed up to all the baseball games. I'm the parent that showed up at the bus stop when it was cold out and made sure that they were warm. Like I think some of that motivation is definitely connected to like what he was probably dealing with in court. Also, I think he cared about us, but yeah.
All right. And how are things? You say you're in touch with your mother once a month or so. How are things with your dad?
Um, I actually moved to another state across like halfway across the country about 6, 7 months ago. So um over the last 6, 7 months, it's definitely become like the communication has been much less frequent, probably around like once a month. Um and he's very there's no like deep interest like how are things going, how's your business doing, you know how's the band, how's like your interests, like it's pretty much like yep, we're just doing work. Like he just tells me like very surface, like it's you don't really crack, it's pretty rare to crack like a conversation with him that's like engaging and connect feels connected. That's uh, very rare. Um, Before these past 6 months where I've been across the country, before that, we would talk probably once a week or once every few weeks. He helped purchase a house for me. Um, he basically, I'm self-employed, so for tax reasons, it's kind of hard to get a mortgage. Anyway, he helped me with the house process, so we were kind of like business partners in a sense, um, on that house purchase. So that was definitely like a connection point that kept us connected, like as far as just maintaining the house and just him wanting to check in on things. Sometimes he would come over and mow the property. Um, he definitely like helped me out with um with that. At the time I really wanted a house. And then obviously like when we sold the house before I moved. Um, I just wanted kind of out from the mortgage and the interest, and I'm 30 years old, so um yeah, I just wanted to kind of get free from that. But we sold the house, so we were definitely like closely connected throughout that process. And then um, yeah, then it kind of comes back to the way things are now, just much less connected. Not really, yeah, no business deal to collaborate on.
Okay. And what's happened with your dating life over the last, say, 15 years?
Oh gosh. Um, well, I was a virgin till 27. When I was 20 and I got connected to like when I got sober, I got sober at like 22, 21. Got really connected to church. Um, Dated a girl through that. Um, it felt like a pretty solid relationship just from like, I felt for the most part, quite respected. Um, I was very, very connected to Christianity and the Bible and like my faith. at that particular time. Like, we never had sex. We never, um, but yeah, I did feel like it was a okay relationship, given the circumstances of like just coming out of like severe drug abuse and um that was like I started dating her when I was 26, maybe 25, 26. We dated for only 4 months or something. Um, and so like before dating her, I thought, I don't know, it was always kind of like a touchy subject for me thinking about it myself. Anytime other people around me would talk about dating, it was always like, it just wasn't like, it's not a topic of conversation I feel confident in talking about because it's like this, it was like this blind spot I had. And I felt like inferior and very undeveloped in that area. Um, Especially when I was like doing drugs, like all I cared about was like just like hedonism and not like trying to like when pornography is so readily available, like the idea of cold approaching a girl, it just like was completely off my mind. Anyway, when I turned like 28, so this is after dating the girl at church. Um, Try not to share too much information. I I became like a in some sorts. There was like in, on Instagram there was like a large. Um, I noticed some pickup artists on Instagram. So you go up, you cold approach a girl. It's all on video. They would post it. I noticed like those videos were really popping off. It seemed like it was like an easy niche to get like traction on. Like, seemed like people were growing audiences really easily when they were posting that type of like cold approach content. So I knew I was exposed to like some cold approach, red pill stuff like over the years, but never really was like too heavily like I never really cold approached. So anyway, I saw these people popping off on Instagram, and so I decided, what the heck? Like, this seems like a good way to motivate myself. Like, I'll get views, I'll get, virality and like maybe build a business off it, a coaching business of like teaching guys how to have confidence to cold approach. And um, so that sent me, I got invested in doing that. And it sent me on like a 6 month, like 100% focus, like cold approaching 20 girls a day, sometimes more. I moved I moved overseas because uh, women overseas, compared to like in the United States, women overseas in a lot of areas are like more feminine, more receptive to men, more beautiful, um, compared to specifically where I was living at the time in the United States. So, um, throughout that like 4 month, 5 month period, um, had sex with like a maybe 9-ish girls. One in particular that was actually like I felt like she genuinely loved me. Like, I just felt so like loved by her, and I I think I would have actually married that woman. But at the time, I she's I don't I know this maybe isn't like politically correct, but she's Mexican, and like now I definitely, as I'm kind of like reorganizing myself and like I'm planning on having kids and planning a family, like I basically like I want a girl who just like loves me like she did and um treated me like she did. Like I it felt amazing. But I do like want my kids to look like me.
Yeah, I mean,
And
if you're white, right, you want a white girl.
I want a white girl, and I want my babies to be white. And
Sure.
yeah,
I mean, Kevin Samuels is a YouTuber and podcaster, and he would ask women, black women, often, "Do you want a black husband?" They say, "Yeah, that's fine. Nothing wrong with having preferences." So, okay.
you know what? If you look, I don't mean to cut you off. The Muhammad Ali actually has.
Yeah,
If
birds
you look up,
fly with birds. The bluebirds fly with the
yeah,
bluebirds, and yeah, yeah.
I
No,
just
listen, there's
yeah,
nothing wrong with having preferences. I know men are shamed for having preferences and blah blah blah. But there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so help me understand, if you can, a little bit. It was a little bit surprising when you went from no sex before marriage to sleeping with women around the world or overseas. Help me understand that transition just a smidge.
sure. So after I actually broke up with the first, like the Christian girlfriend, um, and I do not want to paint the picture of like it was like the perfect relationship. It definitely wasn't. Like she had she had like some masculine quality as far as like her communication. There was something, and like a little bit of just like disrespect. She just like wasn't the most like naturally submissive, feminine like girl. I think she grew up around a lot of brothers, in like a very competitive environment. Um, but anyway, besides the point, I broke up with her actually because I got really connected to a different church. So I got really connected to this church. It was like 90 people. And at the time I was actually um I started street preaching. Like I think I was started like around this time as well. Started watching like these street preaching YouTube videos, and it was very much like repent or you go to hell, and like um and and it was there was also an element of like you don't have to deal with like all this wicked things that you're doing, like the pornography, the like whatever it is, the drugs and like all this stuff, like you do not have to bear that burden. Like there is an opportunity before you, and like um if you repent and like turn to Christ, I don't want you to go to hell. And like I still to some level like um resonate like with a little bit of that message, although I am less connected to Christianity. But um anyway, I was very passionate about like the street preaching, and there's some parts of it that are obviously like very abrasive and um kind of definitely not like the average normal normie guy. It's definitely like love hate, or like a curious thing to get engaged with. But at that time, I got connected to a church who was definitely more, um, I guess, in some ways, like serious, or they were with their preaching, they were more brutal, or like, and obviously, they're still like, they were still loving, they were very loving people. They were very present people in some ways. But I got really connected to that church, and at that I broke up with the girlfriend. I got really connected to that church over the next year and a half, played guitar in their band, got like really invested with those people, and just like literally never missed a day. We would have church. It would be like 3 hours on Wednesday, 3 hours on a weekday, and then like 6 hours on Sunday. I literally like never missed a day for like over a year. And I'm 27, 8 at the time, have a business, like I have a busy life. So I took it really seriously. It was like it was like the most important thing in my life. Um, but after a year and a half, I definitely like started learning things, and like um I guess you could say like philosophy stuff, or just like life. Um, you know, I stopped resonating so much with the church's messaging, And when you kind of emotionally disconnect from the messaging, it's not really easy to emotionally connect with the people. Like that's definitely like a roadblock there. So I just, yeah, basically stopped connecting with the people and the messaging of the church, started kind of going my own way, figuring out who I was and like what to do with all my time. Started really focusing on my business, my health, working out. And then this was around the time where I was like, you know, business was doing quite well. I felt really strong, just like in my individuality and um, like practicing semen retention. And like, yeah, I was just like feeling like really powerful. And then I would see these Instagram videos of guys talking to girls. And I was like, you know what? I'm, I'm not a bitch. I could do that. And I, uh, I just did it. So it was really scary at the beginning. Um, like you just like try to keep your voice strong enough not to be like quivering and shaking if you're like really that nervous. But yeah, and then I got connected to like friends who were doing like similar stuff. When I moved overseas, I was like around people who were also doing it. So I had like a wingman and we would like joke and laugh. We were both sober. Like we just there was like a very strong motivation of like the business aspect as well. We weren't just like of course I wanted to experience sex and like do that as well. Um but yeah, like a huge motivator as well was like I think I can make money from this. This would be so cool to just like be able to travel and like, you know, do this for myself, like change my confidence and then help other guys do this and make money from it. And that kind of I have another business that ended up like the from a financial aspect, it was like, okay, I'm just gonna like do what is working really well. And so I cut out the cold approach stuff. But now I do like I feel like because I'm 30 and I do want to start a family soon. So I feel like if I like I plan on setting aside like a few months this winter to travel and really kind of like focus on dating as well and meeting a girl who can have some babies with me.
And you said you went to different countries. Which were the countries that you went to?
So I it was mainly Mexico. I'm not opposed to saying the specific city, but I think I could.
No,
It
that's
was like
fine.
somewhat,
So it was mostly
yeah.
Mexico. Anywhere else?
No, mainly Mexico, and then also I did go to Turkey for a short trip. Um, Turkey, but mainly Mexico. It's like a somewhat slightly touristy place, but also there's like plenty of people who are very humble and somewhat local as well. So yeah.
So you went for, I mean, Hispanic girls.
I really went because I knew there was somebody there who was doing the exact same content.
No, no, sorry. I
And
just, I just want to be, be, be clear. So you cold approached Hispanic girls.
yeah, I mean, that was the majority of the people that were there.
No,
Yeah, I
no,
wouldn't
you
say
just,
like
I
that
don't
was my
care about, I don't care about
motivation.
any of that. I just
Yeah.
want to, I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
so you cold
It
approached
was mostly
Hispanic.
like
Okay, bro, have I
a
done a lot?
lot of
Hang on,
his.
hang on. Have I done a lot of
Apologize.
listening?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so when I talk, what are you going to do?
Close the lips.
Thank you. I mean, listen, bro, it's been 45 minutes. I barely said anything. So if we're going to have a conversation, when I ask a question or I have a comment, you cannot immediately start over talking me because then it's not a conversation. You can do your own show. Okay?
Got it.
Thank you.
Yes, I do want
So you cold approached Hispanic girls, which is kind of a cheat code, right?
for sure.
Okay,
Easy
so
mode.
just for the audience who's listening, how is that a cheat code?
Uh, it's easy mode. I mean, it's definitely like taking the video game difficulty from hard or medium to just like easy, easy
And
mode.
why is that?
I mean, there's the when they see a white guy who doesn't speak the best Spanish, immediately it's like, okay, this guy's high status, American, money, um, the opportunity of leaving the country probably, and yeah, all that.
Okay, so you slept with 9 Hispanic girls.
Um, most definitely mostly Hispanic. I think there was definitely like one Spanish girl, so like kind of
Okay,
European
so whatever, but
and
still technically Hispanic. Okay. And
so
why did you
actually
go to Mexico for this? Is just because there was a pickup artist community there or something like that?
yes, yeah, to film the videos, build the business.
But isn't it a little bit not real if you say, hey, I'm a cool pickup artist, I go and talk to girls, and you've got the subsidy of being white and American with a potential green card and money? Uh, it's it's like
Absolutely,
it's like saying
absolutely.
I can complete this video game, but you're on like God mode or something.
No question. Yeah, it's not relatable to like the type of people that I was looking to, I guess, sell my services to. So yeah,
And I mean, was that clear? Were you like, well, I'm in Mexico where I have a 5 times my sexual market value because of my nationality, and right, so I'm going to kind of desperate Hispanic girls who find value in me because I'm white and American, and it's not cannot be replicated by in your neighborhood or something like that.
was it clear? Yeah, it was clear. There's also like, hey, I don't know. I guess like travel, like independent travel agencies where guys, you know, basically show other guys like, hey, here's the here's where the nice girls are who actually s- respond well to you, and
Okay,
yeah.
now when you asked out these or you talked to these Mexican girls and you asked them out or you had sex with them, were you clear that you're a pickup artist and you're just really there for sex?
Definitely, there was definitely like a whether I thought of that consciously,
Oh no, come
sometimes
on.
more
You went to
conscious.
Mexico because it was easy to pick up girls and you
I
wanted to
guess,
have
yeah. I
sex
mean,
and right. So I mean you
yeah,
you knew that,
yeah,
right? I mean that's not you didn't wake up and like, where am I?
yeah,
Why is everything
yeah.
why is
I
everything
kind of
orange? Right? So I mean, did you tell the girls that you're a pickup artist and you're really only interested in sex and so on?
no, like not how you just said it.
But I mean
No,
that
I
was kind of
didn't.
the truth, right? Because if you
Um,
say that you have
yeah,
higher
yeah,
sexual if you say you have higher sexual market value because you can offer them a route out of the country, you marry them and make them Americans or whatever it is, right? Then
totally.
they would date you or sleep with you with one eye on that objective, right?
Yes,
Okay. So was that a real possibility for them?
honestly, with that one girl I kind of mentioned in particular, who I felt like I really like. I feel like we connected quite deeply. It was definitely a thought that crossed my mind,
Okay.
but
So not really.
it wasn't my first thought. No,
No,
it
but
wasn't my
it
first thought.
wasn't a real possibility for most for the women as a whole. Like you didn't go into it with like I'm looking to find a wife to bring to America and blah blah blah, right?
No, not at all. Not at
Okay.
all.
So they were more receptive to you or far more receptive to you because of a bit of a con, right? Which is they want to marry and get out of the country, and you only want to sleep with them for the most part.
Fair. Yeah.
I mean, that's a little predatory, isn't it?
Uh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And what was your relationship with philosophy, virtue, Christianity, ethics, that kind of stuff during this time period?
Uh, zero. Like it was pretty much just um, do whatever I need to do to like make this work for me. Like specifically about the business side of things. So like kind of like essentially disregard like all the girls like literally like don't matter what you feel, think, say. Like it was like essentially I just wanted to like kind of force that out of sight so I could like accomplish what I was like trying to accomplish at that time.
Okay. And sorry, just remind me how long you've been listening to what I do.
From Sam Hyde, like a week ago.
Okay, got it. Okay. And you had the one girl you felt loved you, and what did she love about you? I'm not saying there's nothing to love about you, obviously, but what do you think she loved about you?
I just felt like specifically like physically, like just the way, honestly, just like the way she hugged me and like it was definitely like the physical connection. And then she wouldn't
Sorry,
like let me pay
hang
for
on. The physical connection, that's not love, right? That's lust or
it's an
whatever it is, right?
expression. I,
I mean, you can't love hugging someone. I mean,
is
the
it
way that I saw it, and you wouldn't know this definition because you're new, and which is fine, but love is our involuntary response to virtue if we're virtuous. So we love virtue. And this, of course, is not a big shock to your former or maybe somewhat current Christianity, right? That we love the virtue of a person's soul and actions. I mean, we can have sexual desire, and that's healthy and that's good and that's fine. But what we love is virtue. I mean, for a variety of reasons I don't really have to get into here. But would you agree that the best form of love is loving virtue?
like what would be an example of that? Are you talking about like if somebody is honest and they like or like I don't know, yeah, like help me understand like specifically what you mean.
Well, you were a Christian for many years, so it would be things like integrity, honesty, reasonable amounts of moral courage, fighting the good fight, not putting up
Right.
with evildoers, and improving your community with moral actions. And of course, raising children peacefully and well, and all kinds of good stuff.
Got it.
Helping to reinforce moral rules in the environment. And I mean, we could do a bunch more, but I think those would be sort of the first and major ones that I would talk about.
Makes sense.
Okay. So were you manifesting those virtues?
Was I personally manifesting those at that time? Definitely,
Okay, don't hedge,
definitely
right?
not.
I mean, when I ask, were you manifesting those virtues, and you say, was I personally, like that's a dodge, right? I mean, we just need to have a bit more of an efficient conversation.
Sure.
Okay,
I
so
wasn't.
you
No,
weren't manifesting those
definitely not.
virtues, right? You were in.
I was like
Sorry, go ahead.
I was manifesting the opposite.
Okay, so then she couldn't have loved you.
Sure.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm sure there was some lust. Maybe you've got some great moves in bed. Maybe there was physical satisfaction. Maybe there was physical attraction. And of course, there's nothing wrong with physical attraction, but it's not the basis of love. I mean, animals are physically attracted to each other. We don't think of them as having elevated love. So
Well,
if there was no virtue or not much virtue in what you were doing, in fact, it seems like there was some corruption in what you were doing. If there was not much virtue in what you were doing, then she can't have loved you for your virtues. And if she didn't love you for your virtues, well, what is there to love if the person is not
that's actually
morally good?
crazy. That is so crazy. Honestly, it makes sense. Like for a woman to quote unquote like love me, like who I was being at that time is like there wasn't much to love, I guess, aside from lust and her own, perhaps like what I could get out of this, like getting out of the country or the financial.
And of course, you might have had some real fun. You might have gone dancing and had a blast. And there could have been some fun aspects to it, and that's not a bad thing at all. But in terms of virtue as a whole, that's what unites and sustains the relationship. Like I've been married for like 24 years and known my wife even longer. And, we're getting old and creaky and all of that. But, I love her even more because, she's a very moral and good woman and all of that. And so, as your bodies decay and the quality of your souls, so to speak, improves and increases, then that's what compensates for some sort of the physical stuff. You see these sort of old people holding hands and really in love with each other, and I assume that mostly has to do with the fact that they respect each other's virtues, and because the only way that we can trust someone is their commitment to virtue, right? Because everybody has a temptation, obviously to lie and to prevaricate and so on. And so the only thing that gives us stable, predictable actions on the part of the other is their commitment to virtue, right? So my wife and I, of course, have a commitment to tell the truth, so we can trust each other because we have those commitments. And if you can't tell the truth, you can't have much of a relationship. So it is our commitment to virtue that is the essence of pair bonding and trust in the other. Like, we don't wake up every day saying, gee, I wonder what kind of mood that person is going to be in today. Because, we generally have a commitment to be pretty positive and happy and so on. And I admire her strength and courage, and she admires my virtues. So and listen, I say this with genuine humility and no sense of superiority. I want to be sort of really clear about that. And what I mean by that is I was not exactly a perfect person, to put it mildly, in my teens and my 20s. I mean, I wasn't terrible, but I had not learned the value of putting virtues consistently into practice and gaining the fruits thereby. And so I was not superior to you in any way, shape, or form when I was your age. Just want to be really clear about that, so that you don't imagine that I popped out of the womb with this shining virtue, and I can't imagine blah blah blah. So I say this as, to some degree, a reformed sinner. So I just want to say this with all due humility and with absolutely zero sense of superiority or anything like that. So just so you know, I want to be clear on that, so that you don't feel like there's any hierarchy here. I'm just sort of reaching back over the tunnel of the 30 years that divides us, and giving you some lessons from down the road. That's with all humility and so on. So I just don't want this to be like me finger wagging at you and saying, "Oh, how dare you do anything even remotely negative?" I just want to sort of point that out, to be clear.
I appreciate it. I didn't feel that way at all. So
Okay, good. I just want to be clear about that. Okay, so you slept with 9 Mexican women, and of course, you didn't tell them that you wanted a white wife, obviously, because if you'd have told them that you only really wanted sex, that you were just putting the pickup world on easy mode, and that you weren't going to marry them, and you weren't going to have children with them, and you certainly weren't going to take them out of Mexico. So you did, to some degree, gain sex under false pretenses, in that they were hoping to, get you to be their husbands and take them out of Mexico or something like that. And it's not hugely honorable, obviously, to mislead women in order to get sex, especially if there may be, in general, a bit of an intelligence or education gap between you.
I agree.
Okay.
Just
go
to
ahead.
clarify, in principle, everything you just said is like, there's no hole in the bucket. I didn't, at the time, I had no, like, it wasn't even on my mind. I want a white woman to give me white kids. That wasn't even a part of, like, that's kind of a newer.
Well, but you did know that you weren't going to marry these women or give them a life that's better, that they were looking for, something like that. Okay.
100%. Yeah.
So what
I guess
happened?
same thing, really. Yeah.
What happened? And look, I mean, we can walk away from religion, but it's a little tougher to walk away from the morals, right? And obviously, honesty is better in most circumstances and situations. Honesty is better than lying. And I guess my question is, when you walked away, or Christianity's hold diminished upon you, did you then also walk away from the virtues? Like, thou shalt not bear false witness, don't lie about important matters, particularly involving other people and their trust, and so on. I mean, because you've kind of left a wake of women. In your wake, you've left a trail of women who've probably felt kind of used. And I suppose that's my question. What happened to your relationship with things like honesty when you walked away from Christianity?
I definitely I suppose I held some, like, resentments against the church or people in the church, and I definitely started just, like, kind of trying to push out my conscience in, like, some ways and just, like, self-installing my own principles or my own, like, things that fit with, what I wanted at that time and what yeah, it all kinda just became inconvenient, and I was like, "You know what?" Um, like, just, like, I guess, mental gymnastics to try to, like, run away from things that I knew deep down, like, didn't feel right. They didn't feel peaceful. They didn't feel like the highest, most, like, good version of myself, and I just, like, tried to, like, run and, like, push those things away.
And I sympathize. That, of course, is one of the big dangers of religious-based morality. Is you can kind of escape it by, well, not believing in religion. In other words, you throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't believe in God. God is the source of morals. Therefore, I no longer believe in morals. And I sympathize with that as well. That is a big challenge. That is a big challenge. Okay, so when did you come back from this somewhat hedonistic journey?
I suppose when I really, probably, like, 7 months ago, I just had a realization, like, I just wanna focus on, like, my business. It's like just like a home service business, so, um, it just feels less morally bankrupt, I guess, or, like, it feels less grimy to work on that business, and it's that business is, like, doing well as it is, so, yeah, basically, I kinda set my full focus on that, and, um, also to some extent got introduced to philosophy, uh, or just, like, I guess, more positive influences through just, like, the content that I was allowing and consuming at the time. So I definitely, like, shifted to, like, a more healthy journey, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, and how is the what's the best way that I can help you in the time that we have left?
Um, I do I mean, that was definitely like I've never thought, like, okay, I was, like, a very morally, like, satanic like, I was, like, morally bankrupt. Um, so for her to, quote, unquote, "love me," I mean, even if you could love someone like that, I mean, it would be so like, that's not what I want. Um, uh, like I said, I just, like, was introduced to you, like, a week ago. I've watched I had a handful of hours of just, like, kind of random stuff on YouTube, like calls that you've done. Um, how I guess, like, bro, where do I go from here? Like, you said um, you could relate to me, like, around this age, so, like, what changed and do, how do I make sure that, like, my life doesn't end up, like, bad, like,
Yeah,
the things that I
that's a good
experienced?
that's a good question, and that of course, it's the foundational question of, life. How do we end up with a good life morally as well as practically? So let's go right back to the very beginning about the things you said. You've been crying a lot over the last little while, and a lot of it has to do with your sadness about, or the upset that you had around your parents' divorce, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you were saying that when your parents got divorced, you internalized things, sort of made them about you, and it seemed to me, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed to me that there was a kind of judgment in that. You said, I made it about me. In a sense, you kind of, quote, foolishly focused on yourself and not the other things going on. And you also said that your father was, he was flawed and you didn't understand that because you were too young and so on. Do I have that, somewhat correct? Obviously, I'm summarizing quite a bit here.
So that I was too young to understand that he was like corrupt or like distracted and all that. So I was too young.
Well, you
And
didn't
then
say
also
corrupt.
that,
So you were talking about when you were 4 or 5 and you were in a happy mood and you were trying to get his attention. And he just snapped at you and was sort of mean and cold and so on, right? Now,
yeah,
you don't have that memory because of a one-time thing. Because,
100%.
everyone can occasionally get snappy, or if you've just received some really bad news and your kid wants to play, or, something like that, right? I mean, so you have that memory because it represents something important that was repeated. Because, of course,
Of course.
if as a parent, if you are ill-tempered towards your child one time and it destroys the whole bond and, it wrecks their sense of self, I mean, that's too high a stakes and it's not really true.
Of course.
It's not really true. So it's like, one cigarette is not going to kill you. But people who are smokers remember their first cigarette because it led to so many more, which might kill them. So with regards to your father, the reason you remember that is not because your father was ill-tempered and snapped at you one time, but because that represented a consistent or continual pattern in your father, that this revealed something. So I'll sort of give you a silly example. It's a bit of an extreme example or whatever, right? But if you said, I remember seeing my father burying a body in the backyard, I mean, you wouldn't remember that just because of that one incident, but because it revealed to you that your father was a dangerous murderer or something like that, right? So the memories are vivid, not because of the one-time thing, or what we remember is vivid, not because of the one-time thing, but because it confirms consistent negative behavior on the part of another. Does that sort of make sense?
Without question, I intentionally shared those stories because I think they represent things that were reoccurring and just themes of their personality.
Okay, so you took it on yourself that there was something deficient in you which caused your father's ill temper or bad behavior, right?
Yes.
Okay. And everyone does, by the way. Every single human being on this planet, when they're treated badly, consistently treated badly by their parents, make it their own fault. Do you know why?
I think because it's somewhat of a survival, like you rely on this person to feed you, so you have to believe you're able to control them or influence them, or that you're responsible for like the outcomes. That
Well, yeah, because, okay, so imagine if you had said to your father, at whatever age, let's give you, fantasy abilities when it comes to language and moral consistency, right?
Mhm.
So if you'd have said to your father, oh, hey, dad, okay, you're not treating me well, you're kind of self-absorbed, you're ill-tempered, I don't enjoy your parenting, I need you to step up and start doing the right things and stop being so self-absorbed, what would your father have said?
uh, like how disrespect. Like he would say, how disrespectful.
Okay, so you play your father and he'd say, how disrespectful, right? And I said, well, Dad, listen, just about every time I come up and try to play with you, you snap at me. So if being disrespectful is bad, you are disrespecting me as a child. I mean, you chose to have me. You chose to have me with mom. You chose to keep me. And so if respect is important, how about you respect my needs as a child to have some positive frickin' interactions with his parent?
Yeah,
And what would he say?
he would. That would infuriate him. I mean, I think he might just
Sorry,
run
he would
away at
what?
that point. I think that would infuriate him, and he might just run away at that point. Like he would.
Okay, so then if he ran away, you would say, yo, dad, big man, big tough guy, come back here, sit your ass down. I'm just a little kid. What are you, running away from a little kid? What are you, what are you, crazy? What's the matter with you? Come back here, sit your ass down and have a conversation with your kid. Idiot. Sit down. What are you running away from a kid for? Jesus, you're supposed to be an authority figure. Dad, I'm supposed to look up to you and respect you. And you're running away when I point out that you kind of have a dual standard when it comes to responsibility. Like I'm supposed to respect, and so it's disrespectful. It's like, okay, so I'm supposed to respect you, but you don't have to respect me. I'm supposed to cater to your needs, but you don't have to cater to any of my needs. So that's hypocritical, and that's fine, whatever, right? But I don't understand why you'd run away from a kid who's pointing out that you have some double standards, right?
Right.
I mean, you chose to be a father. You've got to be a moral leader. You've got to have some authority, right?
For sure.
And you can't just demand respect without acting in a manner that is respectful. That's ridiculous. It's like demanding money without doing any work. I don't do the welfare state when it comes to respect. And what would he say? Ooh, let's say your mother was in the room.
Man, honestly, I don't know because I barely remember them.
Well, no, if he was having if he was having a lot of trouble with your mother and you were pointing out that he was a hypocrite.
Oh, she would probably turn on him too.
Well, she would. And so what would your relationship...
turn on one of us.
Yeah. What would your relationship be like with your father if you pointed all of this stuff out directly and you cornered him and you proved him wrong about this respect stuff or whatever?
I would be dead to him. I don't know. He would...
Well, no, you're right.
Probably.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. You would be dead to him. So if your parent is treating you consistently badly and you point that out in ways that the parent can't just intimidate you into dropping, then the great fear and the great danger and the very real danger is you lose their care and protection. Now, evolution can do anything. Evolution endlessly experiments and tinkers with things. And so in the course of our evolution, children evolved who confronted their parents with their parents' own hypocrisy and lack of moral leadership and manipulation. And was the survival chances of those children greater or less?
Apparently less.
Well, not apparently. It would be less.
Right.
I mean, especially in the past when children could be kind of wiped out pretty easily. Whoopsie, you know?
Right, yeah.
In our sort of primitive million-year-plus back evolution, you just, this kid's possessed by a demon. You hand him over to the Aztec priest and he cuts the heart out. So children have evolved as a foundational survival mechanism. When the parents are treating them badly, the child inflicts guilt and shame upon himself in order to maximize his chances of survival. But it's a lie. It's a necessary lie. It's like if some horrible dictatorship arrests you and demands that you sign some piece of paper that says you're guilty of something, and if you sign that, then they'll set you free, and if you don't, they'll send you to a gulag. Well, sign the paper. It's not like because you have to do it, but you don't internalize it and say, I guess I really did do these terrible things, right? You just say, okay, well, they had me by the short and curlies. They had me in a very dangerous situation. So if some guy stops me in the alley and puts a gun to my ribs and says, give me your wallet, I just give him my wallet, but I don't sit there and say, well, I was strangely generous to that guy. I don't, I guess I did something wrong, or maybe I misunderstood things. Like, no, there was a gun to my ribs. So I give him my wallet, and then, hopefully the police will try and catch him or something like that, right? So when you internalized this, it's perfectly natural. It wasn't even a choice. It is an evolutionary necessity. Only the children who blame themselves can survive cold, distant, aggressive, unempathetic parents. Only the children who blame themselves can survive dysfunctional parents. So we have been handed the instinct to blame ourselves with regards to dysfunctional parents as surely as we have inherited sensations of pain, hunger, and lust.
Wow.
So you did what you had to do in order to survive. Now, Christianity comes along and says, and I could hear the echo at the beginning of the conversation of Christianity and what you were saying. Well, I was mad at my father. I didn't realize, of course, that my father was a flawed sinner who had his own problems, and I should have empathy, and blah, 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 blah. And that's all toxic and dangerous and nonsense in a very foundational way. Because if empathy is a virtue, then your father should have had empathy for you. And it doesn't sound like your parents have created one goddamn shred of empathy for you over the past 30 years, because what you haven't said to me, this is why I was asking how things were with your parents. Have your parents apologized? Have they fessed up their wrongs? Have they said, gee, you don't seem to be having much luck in the dating market. I don't know that it's a wise idea to go to Mexico and half lie to girls in order to get them into bed and leave a trail of bitter women in your wake and then probably complain about feminism down the road. Feminism is one of the shadows cast by male promiscuity. Your parents don't seem to be giving you any advice or feedback or wisdom or care or concern or curiosity. If I'm wrong, obviously let me know. But you're the one who has to tell your mom basic things like, hey, if you're married to an abusive man, maybe you could leave him. Why not? Look at that. So your parents are barely toddlers. So you got to parent them. You've got to get them the obvious things. Where's their empathy and concern for your welfare and well-being? I don't know what's been going on with your half-sister, but I assume it's somewhat similar. So they're selfish.
I agree with everything you just said. And honestly, I've heard other people say this on your show, like I didn't really see how I was kind of empathizing or like excusing them. Like I didn't even. I was going to ask you though.
Well, hang on. Sorry, let me just.
Sorry.
So excusing them, fine. So when you misbehaved as a child, and I don't even know really what misbehaved means, but let's just say you did things that your parents didn't like. When you misbehaved as a child, were you excused and forgiven, or were you punished? Or was there a withdrawal of affection or some other controlling mechanism?
All that. Yeah.
All that, right. So forgiveness is something that is earned by other people forgiving you. It is a mutual relationship. Like morality is not just a set of absolute standards that we just have to follow no matter what, because that puts us under the control of evil people, right? So if you have a standard called, well, I got to be honest, right, then some evil person or some manipulative person will demand you tell them the truth while having no intention of telling you the truth, and thus you'll be under the control of manipulative evil people who will work the levers of your morality in order to get you to do what they want without having earned it themselves.
Sounds like Christianity.
Well, the endless forgiveness stuff is interesting, right? So, we have to forgive wrongdoing. Okay, what about those who have never themselves forgiven wrongdoing or admitted to their own wrongdoing? Sorry, you're just in a very windy area, is that right?
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks. So, if forgiveness is a virtue and your parents did your parents forgive each other for their wrongdoings? Nope. Did your mother expose you the black fellow that she married who she said did horrible, unspeakable things, and I can only imagine what sickness maybe they got up to in the bedroom, but he was kind of cold and mean to you, and she exposed you to that, and she pursued her own lusts at the expense of her children's well-being.
For sure. No question about that.
And are your parents Christians? I'm sorry?
I mean, I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, we were raised like going to church. So.
Okay, so your parents are Christians.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I would say so.
Okay, so in Christianity, if your marriage is in trouble, you're supposed to forgive each other, find the virtues in each other. You're supposed to seek counseling from the priest or from someone else to help keep the marriage together, and so on, right?
Yes.
And you're supposed to forgive. Did they do any of that?
No.
Right, so they're just skin suit Christians, right? They just put on the suit, go to church, but it has no actual impact on the decisions that they make in their life on any kind of regular or daily basis, right?
Definitely.
Okay. The only thing your father would probably demand is honor thy mother or thy father, right?
That would be a good one for him.
Yeah, because that's convenient to him, and it allows him to receive the great gift of honor without actually having to be honorable.
Yes.
So I want you to think, what's your favorite female name?
I don't. Alexa.
Alexa. Okay.
Alexa.
Now we've just woken up everybody's AI.
Oh shoot.
Alexa. freedomain.com/donate. All right.
I was gonna say Aaliyah, but
no, Aaliyah's probably better, so we don't keep waking up everyone's little tube of monitoring. Okay, Aaliyah. All right. Now let's say that you meet Aaliyah over the next little while, and Aaliyah is strong and wise and virtuous and smart and funny, and she's got it together and so on, right? And then you say to Aaliyah, "Hey, you get to join my family if we get married." And she says, "Okay, tell me a little bit about your parents," and that they're, you find out that they're hypocrites, and your mother might have been a masochist if she was being tortured in some manner, perhaps sexually, by her second husband, and that they're petty, and that they don't ever talk about anything important, and that they're hypocrites, and so on. And you're like, "Hey, these could be the grandparents of your kids. You could spend the next 30 years with these people. Christmases, birthdays, 4th of July, Thanksgiving. We'll be together a lot. Hey, they might even move close when we have kids, and you might get to see them every day, when they retire and stuff like that. So, what do you think?" And what would Aaliyah say?
If she knew, like if she really knew,
if she knew, she met them, she's smart and wise, right?
She would run. If she was smart and wise too, she would definitely run. She would definitely. Yeah, she would run.
Well, that's the price you're paying for being in contact with people who are, to put it as nicely as possible, kind of low quality.
Sure.
So your dating prospects are completely limited by your parents, because women marry into families. Men date women. Women evaluate families, at least if they're wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because women usually end up spending a whole lot more time with the in-laws than men do, historically, right? Like evolutionarily speaking, because the men are off hunting or, in your case, going to work and stuff. And it's the in-laws who have the most contact with the mother of your children, like your parents, and their parents too, of course.
Right.
And so she is going to judge you to some degree and to a large degree, and it probably, if she's wise, it would be a decisive factor. She is going to judge you by your parents. Right. Your relationship with your parents conditions every other relationship in your life. Have your friends ever said, "I don't think you have a good relationship with your parents, and they don't strike me as particularly honorable people. In fact, it might be quite the opposite. They seem kind of petty and selfish and driven by emotion and passion and not reasonable and all of that"? I mean, have any of your friends ever pointed that out to you?
I don't think so.
Okay. So what that means is that your friends either are the same way or they're frightened of these kinds of people. And so even your friendships are conditioned by that. Everything in your life is conditioned by maintaining the relationship with your parents, because you're used to conforming to them, which is a survival mechanism, and that's what they need you to do. So the reason your parents didn't particularly mind you going to bang a bunch of Hispanic girls like Roger Taylor is because those Spanish girls, or the Hispanic girls, the Mexican girls, posed no threat to them. If you meet a high-quality woman, a woman of courage and a woman of self-respect and so on, is she going to want to spend the next 30 years with your parents?
Hell no.
Who are the people who've done the most harm to you, which have caused you to weep? And again, I respect the emotion. Who are the people who've caused the most harm to you in your life?
Definitely my parents.
Okay. And they have not repented. They've not gone to therapy. They've not apologized. They've not made restitution or anything like that, right?
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely my parents.
Sorry. And your parents have not apologized, gone to therapy, made restitution, or anything like that, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So if Aaliyah loves you, can she also love your parents since they've done the most harm to you?
Logically, no. definitely not.
Right. I mean, if Aaliyah's brother had beat her up for the course of her childhood and still physically threatened her as an adult, could you love Aaliyah and love her brother?
I'm sorry.
Let me know if you can hear me.
Oh, there we go. There we go. I can hear you.
Are you in a bad signal place or?
I haven't moved since the
Okay, no
beginning.
problem. We'll just, so
I did
let's
get in
say,
a
hang
car
on.
though, so maybe I'll get out of my car and yeah.
All right, let me know when you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay.
I can hear you.
So let's say that Aaliyah's brother had beaten her up through a lot of her childhood and still physically threatened her and had never apologized, even still physically threatened her to this day. Could you love Aaliyah and also love her brother?
Certainly not. I would tell her to don't talk to him, don't go near him.
Would
That's
you
what I
want
would want.
would you want Aaliyah's brother to babysit your children?
Far from it.
So this is what a quality woman is evaluating when she sees you and meets you. And it comes across in about 10 seconds from you. Do you know that you are in dysfunctional relationships? Do you know why?
What's that?
Because your voice is kind of heavy, that you're kind of carrying a burden, that you don't have any particular animation, and it's kind of monotone. I mean, you are carrying a burden, and it comes across within 5 to 10 seconds of hearing your voice. And even if you were speaking in another language, if you kind of are talking like this and it's just kind of heavy and so on. I mean, if you heard someone like that, would you say, well, that seems like a happy, positive person?
No.
No. And that's because you're carrying a burden. I mean, you don't have to carry the burden. I mean, my advice has always been the same with people who have problems with their parents, and I think you've got some pretty legitimate problems with your parents in that your mother brought a violent man. I mean, your parents had a horrible divorce. Your father was snappy and distant. Your mother brought a violent, dangerous guy into you and your siblings' lives and so on, and didn't even have the common sense to get out of an abusive relationship. So you have some legitimate and reasonable complaints. So my advice, it's always been the same. If you have problems with your parents, and I think you have very legitimate grievances with your parents, if you have problems with your parents, you should talk to them about it. And you should keep talking to them about the problems you have with your parents and have real conversations like, hey, this stuff happened when I was a kid. It's pretty negative, you know. I didn't like it. It was kind of a problem. It's caused me a lot of problems. And also, you're kind of letting me drift in my adult life without giving me any advice or feedback, or even asking me really how I'm doing or whether I'm getting what I want in my life. Like, there's a reason you're calling me, and I'm glad that you are. And I appreciate the trust you've given me in this conversation. There's a reason you're calling me. And that's because you don't have anyone in your life to talk about important matters of life and virtue and honesty and integrity and courage and true success in life. You don't have anyone to talk to in your life about that. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And again, I say this with sympathy, and I didn't when I was your age either in any particular way. So I say this again with all due humility, but that's the fact. So why are you talking to me and not your parents? Because your parents don't seem to care. I am a parent myself.
Right.
And if my daughter was 30 and alone and drifting, I mean, I would never let that happen in the first place, right? I mean, you get involved with your kids' lives. Your parenting doesn't end the moment they turn 17 or 18, because you're always older and wiser, hopefully wiser. So I would, be talking to my daughter. I would be, asking her what was going on, how I could help, if there's anything I did that was negative, that has caused these kinds of things, and so on, right? Wouldn't that be my job?
Correct. Yes.
So your parents want all the benefit of being parents, deference, respect, contact, and so on. Your parents want all the benefits of being parents without the actual trouble and difficulty of, I don't know, being parents.
I 100% agree with that.
It's like some guy says, hey, man, I want you to pay me $500 an hour to be your dentist. Are you a dentist? Well, no, but I like $500 an hour. It's like, well, why would I pay you $500 an hour and let you poke around with my teeth if you're not even a dentist? So let me ask you this. If you met your parents at some dinner party, they were just They weren't your parents. They were just some people you met at a dinner party or a party or, I don't know, some social gathering, whatever, right? You just met your parents and they are who they are, right? Nothing magical or different. And you got a chance to chat with them for a while or something like that. Would you want to be in regular contact with them going forward?
I'd say definitely not.
Right. So parents should be people that you find to be enormously valuable and helpful in your life. And this is Christianity. I've got a whole book called Peaceful Parenting at peacefulparenting.com for those who listen later, which is if you want the privileges of parenthood, that you have children and they should want to spend time with you and maybe gives you some respect and look to you for some leadership, then you actually have to earn those privileges, right? I mean, it's funny, when my daughter was younger, I would tell her, as tends to be the case, I would tell her some pretty bad dad jokes, right? And she didn't mind that. She liked them at first, of course, because she was very young. But then when she got older and her humor got more sophisticated, and I would tell her, things like, hey, did you know in Wisconsin, they have banned those round cylindrical rolled up hay. They banned you can't gather hay like that together. And she'd say, oh, why did they ban it? I'd said, because the cows just can't get a square meal. And I'd start laughing. And then she would say to me, you have lost your joke telling privileges. You have lost your privileges. And that's very funny, in my view. That's very funny. Are you still with me? Oh, Lord. Are we back? Hello? All right. Do we have him with us or not? I do not know, but I cannot hear. All right. Going once, going twice.
Hello. Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, what did
apologize.
you last hear?
To answer your question, I would absolutely not. If I was at a dinner party, and they were just like strangers,
Okay. So they do not, nobody deserves the reward without the value, right? So if you go to a restaurant and you order a burger and fries, and they don't bring you the burger and fries, but they present you the bill, do you pay it?
No.
No, you say, I'm not paying.
that.
I'm not paying this. You didn't even bring me the burger and fries. I said, well, the kitchen was busy, but we need the income. What would you say?
I'd say that's not how this works.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry that you need the income, but one of the reasons that you need the income is you charge people for meals you didn't even deliver, right? And of course, if they locked the restaurant door and whatever, then you'd have to call the cops, and the cops would come, and the cops would say, why aren't you letting this person leave? You say, well, he didn't pay his bill. And they turn to you and say, why didn't you pay your bill? And you said, because they didn't bring me the food. They say, did you not bring him the food? It's like, no, we didn't bring him the food. The kitchen was busy. Then the guy would say, well, you're now in legal trouble because you've unlawfully confined someone for charging them for something you didn't even deliver, right? So it would switch, right? So if people don't deliver value, you don't owe them value. When was the last time your parents gave you thoughtful and meaningful advice that has helped you in your life?
So, I mean, I can't even think of anything. That's definitely like in other relationships, I find myself giving value without like receiving value. Like,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the Marxists always say, well, the workers are exploited. Okay, maybe, but one of the reasons the workers are exploited is that parents exploited them emotionally and perhaps financially first. They delivered them into the marketplace with the mindset of, I provide value, I don't need to receive value. In fact, I don't even want to ask the question as to whether I receive value. Because if you had evaluated your parents from the standpoint of, do they provide value to me? Do I come to them with my problems? Do they help me with my life? Are they curious about my life? Do they know what's going on? And so on. If you were to go to your parents as a kid and say, are they providing me value other than just, food and shelter or whatever, going to the dentist and stuff, but are they providing me emotional, spiritual, moral value? I think the answer would be no, right?
yeah, definitely they provided the financial value and like that, food and everything.
Well, I mean, prison does that too,
but
but prison does that as well. But if you're unjustly imprisoned, so we don't sit there and say, well, you've got to take care of the prison guards for the rest of your life because they gave you food and shelter. It's like that. It's not how that works either, right?
It's a fair analogy.
So if you want a good life, the most important ingredient in a good life for a man is a good wife. I mean, productive employment, like work and love, those are the two big things that men need to focus on. And for a man, with regards to work, I'm a philosopher, not a career advisor, so I can't give you much advice on that. But I will say that the best ingredient to a good life is a good wife. Philosophy can certainly help you with that. Now, if you invite a quality woman on a date and you pick her up and your car is dusty as shit, filled with Monster Energy drinks, leftover wrappers, gum is stuck to the door, and it's dirty, will she want to get in the car in her nice dress?
Nah, she'll be like, what's going on here?
Yeah, like, well, what's the matter with you that your car is a garbage dump? And if you said,
Right.
no, you should come back to my place, and she comes back to your place or whatever, and your place is also, trash on the floor, stuff spilling out of the garbage, dishes in the sink, the dirty dishes in the sink, and the fridge is smelly and so on, will she want to date you?
No,
No, of course not, right?
to reflect. Yep.
Yeah, so if your relationships are trashy, it's even worse for a woman than if your car and your home is trashy.
Right. It's
So,
even more important.
you can only get low quality women if your relationships are bad.
Right.
So the thing that you need to do, in my opinion, if you want a quality woman, is you need to have quality relationships. It means you've got to go through all of your relationships and say, when was the last time this person provided deep and actual value for me? Does this person care about me? Did they give me better advice or warn me against going around the world dangling a green card in order to get sex, right? Have they pursued my relationship with more virtue? Like when you drifted away from Christianity, do people say, okay, I can understand that there are some logical problems and so on, but how are you going to get your source of virtue if it's not coming from God? Like, how are you going to be a good person if you're not coming from God? This is pretty obvious stuff, right? That people say morals come from God. If you don't believe in God, the big danger is you no longer believe in morals, right? And then you become a hedonist, and then your life goes to shit over time, right? And so, did you have anyone over the course of the last 10 years that you were in and out of Christianity who cared about your morals? Where you going to get your virtue from?
No, I definitely don't have like anyone who said that or would say that.
Okay. So, if I was an alcoholic and every time I quit going to my AA meetings, I started drinking ferociously again. And if I said, you know what, I'm not going to go to AA anymore, what would people around me say?
Say like, oh man, that doesn't sound like a good idea. And then they would, yeah.
Yeah. So if going to AA was the only way I kept my sobriety, then if I said I'm going to stop going to AA, people would say, okay, well, how are you going to keep your sobriety? And if your
Right.
morals come from God and you decide to stop believing in Christianity, people are going to say, well, where are you going to get your morals from? And
It's a
that's
logical
exactly what
question.
happened, right? You left Christianity and you became a hedonist. Whew, free of all these
Sure.
rules, baby. Thank God. Or not thank God,
Thank
but you know
God.
what I mean? Like, I'm now free of all these rules. Thank goodness. Now I can finally go and do what I want without guilt and without shame and without this and without that and without, right? And
Right.
this is very much, your story is the story of everyone, just about who leaves Christianity or leaves a religion as they tip over into hedonism. And then they're like, well, geez, now I'm really screwed. I don't believe in God, but hedonism isn't really working. And then they call me, right? Or something like that, right?
Here we are.
Right. So I think you got to take out the old spreadsheet or a piece of paper and a pencil. If you're like my wife, she's very old school that way. I keep offering her digital solutions, and she's like, nope, I have my pencil and paper, and it drives me nuts. But hey, she is who she is, and I love her for it. So you got to get out the spreadsheet or the piece of paper, write down all your relationships and say, when was the last time this person gave me significant value? And if you really can't think of any, and I'm guessing you can't, then you got to call that person up and say, this may seem mean, this may seem unfair, but to be honest, I'm kind of going through all my relationships and figuring out where the mutual value is. I can think of the things that I've done for you, and, I helped you move and helped you through that breakup with your girlfriend or whatever it is, right? But, I'm not, and I'm not saying I'm right about this, but I'm not really seeing much in the what you're doing for me column. And because I was raised to only serve my parents' needs, and they never really thought much about my needs or preferences or what was good for me. I have a bad habit of working to provide value for others without, really expecting or demanding much in return. And if we sort of agree that you haven't been providing me much value, then I have a big problem with you, because I think you've been exploiting the wounds left behind by my parents to get stuff from me without having to give anything in return. I don't like that. I think that's actually kind of vile. So again, I'm open to the case, but that's what I'm going through. And, something like that, I'm obviously not telling you what to say, but something like that. And even if you do it just in your mind, you can have lots of arguments with people you've known for a while because they've taken up residence in your mind, right? That's what happens. So if you were to go through that process, and if you find out that people have been exploiting you because your parents exploited you and left you with those habits, then you can't have quality relationships if you have people who are exploiting you in your life, because a quality woman won't want to be around those people. And the more she loves you, the more she's going to dislike people who exploit you.
Right.
And that's my version of being a pickup artist, which is to pick up a quality woman, a good woman.
Got it. Could I ask you a kind of a specific question about like logistics and these conversations?
Sure.
To be like forward, I don't really have like many I don't have many friends. Like, it's not like I have people to really call for the most part.
All right.
Um,
Then just do it with your parents.
I think the parents, I mean, that's definitely the most important one.
And maybe siblings as well. I don't know. You've got a half sister, if I remember rightly.
Yeah. How do those conversations, I mean, is it just exactly what you said? That wasn't really something geared towards parents.
Okay, so if you to call your parents, I've done this with my own parents, by the way, so I have some experience with this. So yeah,
Sure.
talk to your parents and say, I have some real issues with how I was raised, and I'd like to talk to you about it. I think obviously you did some good things as parents, and I'm not trying to throw you 100% under the bus or say you were the worst people ever, right? But so you did some good things, and there were times where we played together, and you gave me good food and shelter and so on. But there were some negative things, and I think it's having a pretty negative effect on my life, and I really want to talk about it. And assuming they say, okay, say, well, the divorce was really bad, and you were kind of cold to me, Dad, and, Mom, you brought this brutal guy into our lives with your second marriage, and you fought like crazy with Dad, and, it was all just pretty bad. And you didn't really know what was going on in my life. You didn't really care about me, and you still don't seem to care that much about me. Like, you don't really call me up and ask me how my life is going or whether I'm happy, or, you've noticed that I'm unmarried and you never really asked me about that. Like, it just feels like it's not really much of a relationship at all. And I think I think a lot about what you guys need and want. I don't remember the last time you guys called me up and asked me how I was doing. And you've never really asked me how my childhood was and all of that. And you guys did some pretty objectively bad things as parents. And again, I'm not 100%, worst people in the world. And there were some things that you did that were good that I really appreciate. But, if your food comes and your French fries are hot, but your hamburger is cold, and you send it back, you don't say that everything was bad. You just say that, there's something that was bad. And yeah, some fries were hot, hamburger was cold. So I really need to talk about it, because I think I have a bad habit of just thinking about what other people need and not expecting anything in return. And that's not good for my dating life. That's not good for my business life. It's not good for my life as a whole. And, it's a scary thing to talk about. My heart's like kind of pounding just bringing this topic up.
Thinking about
it. Yeah, because I kind of need to know what you guys think about in terms of parenting and how you would evaluate your parenting. And if they say, well, we were good parents, this, that, and the other, then you can ask them about the major things that were going on as a child for you, right? Like, did you know how unhappy I was at the divorce? Did you know, if you were bullied at school? Did you know I was bullied at school? Did you know that I didn't date? Did you know I had a pornography, blah, blah, blah? Like, did you know about my relationship with religion? Did you know the struggles that I had? Did you know, do they know sort of basic things about your life as a whole? And if they're selfish people, which it sounds like they are, I don't know for sure, then they won't really know any of these things. And if you ask for reciprocity, they'll just get angry. They'll just threaten you. They'll just escalate. They'll just become aggressive. I shouldn't laugh, but it's a long time ago now. When I was doing this with my mother, she literally started throwing things around the room. like, how dare you? And don't you have any sympathy for me? I've been sick for years and blah, like all this kind of stuff, right? So when I tried to say with my
Wow.
mother, here's some issues that I had about growing up, she just became aggressive and I mean violent, not towards me because obviously I was a big guy and she's not a big woman, but she became aggressive and threw things around. And then it's like, okay, so I can't have any say in this relationship. I can't have any feedback. I can't give any feedback. I can't give any coaching. I can't be honest. So I don't want this relationship because I can't be honest. And because when I am honest and say, here's things that I would like to see improved. Here's the problems I've had with the relationship. Because you didn't choose a relationship with your parents. You did. They chose each other and they hated each other. You didn't even choose them. You're just born into it, right? So they should be they should be the nicest with you of anyone because you're the one person not there by choice. Again, along with your half sister. So you just have the conversation and you see if they're willing to listen to you and to take your thoughts and feelings into consideration. I mean, I'm in a continual process of asking my family and my friends, how's it going? Is there anything I can do better? Is there anything I can improve upon? Is there anything that's annoying you about me? 'Cause I don't want to know. This is why, a couple of times over the course of this conversation, I've said, hey, what can I do in the time that we have together that's going to be the most valuable for you? I've asked you that a couple of times because it's really important to me that you get value out of the conversation. Like you're offering up the details of your personal life to the world, which is a value to the world. And I want to make sure that you're getting value back in the conversation. Which is also why, I was kind of sharp with you earlier, which was if you keep talking over me, then, you can't get value out of the conversation, right? So, I mean, if I'm trying to give you a great meal and you keep knocking the plate out of my hands, it's kind of annoying because I want you to have a great meal. So I think just that process of talking to people about things that you have a problem with in the relationship, having that level of honesty. If your parents can handle that, I doubt they can. But if they can handle that, you can have a great conversation. You can have a breakthrough and you can start having a real relationship with them. If they get pissy, manipulative, aggressive, avoidant, run away, hang up, blah, 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 well, that's your answer. Then you have people in your life who did bad things and will never take any responsibility for them and will only push the buttons that make you feel bad. Right? Oh, so disrespectful. We did the best we could. You're so ungrateful. You've always been this way. Like they start hammering those buttons of shame and guilt. Well, that's just downright abusive. And I don't have people like that in my life. Like I just won't. Life's too short and I've got too much going on.
If that were to, because I do, I've had, I guess, experiences like that where I kind of try to bring something up. And I don't know if I did it in the best way or
No. See, that's you blaming yourself again, right? You shouldn't
yeah,
have
no,
to bring
I
it up. You shouldn't have to bring it up. Your parents should have been asking
should
you
have brought
about
it.
what was valuable to you over the course of your childhood. They should have known what was going on. They should know if they're providing value. They shouldn't have to wait until you're 30 for you to bring it up, any more than your mother should have to wait for you to say, hey, maybe leave the violent second husband or whatever, right? So it is not your job. You can't do it badly because you shouldn't have to do it at all.
So what is? I
It's
have
sort of like,
a couple.
sorry to interrupt. So it's sort of like if I'm on a 2-seater plane, right? And the pilot just downs a fifth of vodka and can't fly. And I say, well, maybe I'm not going to fly that well. It's like, man, I shouldn't have to fly at all. I'll fly the best I can, but I shouldn't have to fly this thing at all. I'm not going to blame myself because the guy just downed a fifth of vodka and can't fly now. He's passed out. So I just want to point, you can't do the conversation badly because you shouldn't have to do the conversation at all. Should be their job.
Got it. So if they do, I mean, I have two thoughts basically. I pretty much just based on my mom and my dad, just based on their character and past experiences, I almost feel like I just want to avoid because I'm pretty sure they're gonna respond
No, hang on. But
with
this
a
is hang on, sorry to interrupt again. This is the merging. So they don't want you to have this conversation. Your future family desperately needs you to have this conversation. The woman you're going to date is going to be conditioned by this. So you need to have this conversation. They don't want to have this conversation, and you're used to serving their needs. So you got to differentiate between the two.
Got it.
It's a value to you to have this conversation. It's not a value to them that you have this conversation. And so it's not that you don't want to have the conversation. You do want to have the conversation because we like to be honest, and it has a great cost for you to not have this conversation. There'll be great benefits to have this conversation. Your parents don't want you to have this conversation. It's kind of like if your father was a criminal of some kind and you wanted to go to the police, and you'd say, well, I don't want to go to the police. It's like, well, no, your father doesn't want you to go to the police, right? So you're just used to obeying them, and they don't want you to have this conversation. And so, but this is a way of saying that you're independent of them, that you've grown up, that you're your own man, your own person, is that you don't just have to do what your parents want, especially if it's wrong. They want you to keep lying. They want you to keep pretending that things were good that weren't good. They want you to keep bearing false witness. They want you to keep falsifying your entire existence. That's a huge cost to you. It's a huge cost to your honesty, directness, and integrity, and happiness. So it's time to step up and tell the truth. And if they get upset with the truth, that's on them. That's not on you. And the only alternative is to continue lying, which means having no relationships or bad relationships.
Okay. That makes sense. One follow-up question to that. If, let's say I suspect they're going to respond negatively. So, if they do respond negatively to that conversation and get aggressive and just rationalize or like self-justify
Or
and
attack you.
Yeah. Argue, and definitely like the attacking and aggression, like, I feel like at that point I would probably that would really hurt, and I would just want to pretty much hang up. And then
it's
I
better in
assume the
person if you
next
can,
thing,
but if you can't, that's fine. Sorry, go ahead.
right, that makes sense. Um, I don't really see them. Like, I don't really think I'll see them for the next. I don't plan on going home for the holidays. I don't visit my mom. I call them. But I was going to ask, like, what would be the next step then? Obviously, sorry for the wind if that's, I'm guessing the end result is probably going to be like me writing a letter of some sort being like, hey, I, like, I can't maintain this relationship. Doesn't work for me. Um, what would that look like, I guess?
Well, if you don't owe them that. You can just fade away if you want. Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of talk therapy. So if you do go through some sort of no contact situation with your parents, I'm a big fan of having a talk therapist and somebody who's maybe got some experience with family separations and so on. So if they react really badly and you're thinking of not being in contact with your parents, I'm a big fan of talking to a therapist about it who's got some experience with this, because I don't know how you detach. I kind of detached, and I might say nobody in particular cared, which is kind of funny, right? In a way, like now, many years later, I could look at it as kind of funny that I was turning myself into knots over a relationship where people didn't even really raise much of an effort to chase after me or bring me back or anything like that. So I was kind of turning myself inside out and kind of ruining my life for the sake of people who didn't even particularly care whether I was there or not. So it was kind of odd or ironic or strange or whatever it is that you want to say. So, do you owe them a letter? Do you not owe them a letter? I don't know. If people treat me badly, I don't owe them anything.
What if I just, at this point, I feel like I'm already like, I feel like I just don't even want to talk to them. Like, I feel like I don't, it's not like we have a relationship as it is. I almost just like would rather just like leave it behind.
Well, and again, you don't know this about the show. Like, I don't tell people what to do because obviously you have to puzzle it out yourself, and there's no point turning me into some authority figure that knows what you should do. I don't know what you should do. I do think you should be honest in your relationships. I think that's important. If you're not honest in your relationships, I think you need to be conscious of that, and you need to say, okay, well, I'm going to spend time with my parents. I'm not going to bring anything up important with them. They're going to gaslight me. It's going to be avoidance and so on. And, just be conscious of it. Like, you can do whatever you want in life as long as you're conscious of what you're doing and it's not just habit, if that makes sense. So if
Right.
if there are things that are unresolved with your parents, and I think there are, just based upon how you described things earlier, which was you kind of put the blame on yourself at the beginning. Like should go back and listen to the beginning of this conversation, not because you did anything wrong or bad, but I'm obviously listening very intently at the beginning. And you were talking about how you were kind of at fault. Well, you didn't understand this, and you made it about yourself, which sounds kind of selfish. And you made the divorce about yourself, and you failed to have empathy for your father. You didn't understand that he was a flawed person, and so you took the blame on yourself at 5 and 8 years old. Now, obviously,
and then I'm taking the blame on myself for taking the blame on myself, kind of as well.
right. So, look, clearly, at the age of 5 and 8, you were not responsible for what was going on in your family. Like, we can agree on that, right?
Yes.
Right. So then, if bad things were happening in the family and it's not your fault, it's your parents' fault because they're adults. It's like blaming if I get a dog and I don't feed the dog, it's like blaming the dog. It's like, no, I'm the dog owner. The dog can't go and get its own food. Can't go to the grocery store, PetSmart, or go get its own food and figure out the can opener, but there's little paws or anything. I got to feed the dog. So my concern is that you blame yourself for what your parents did. Now, we can, of course, say, but your parents were too immature and they were blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, I don't know anything about that. I don't know for sure. I don't know if they were immature or they were making choices or not. So one of the reasons that it's important, I think, to talk to parents if you have issues with them is you need to find out their level of cunning. So if they become manipulative, if they become verbally abusive or insulting or put you down, or, mothers will often, so you think I'm the worst mother ever. They start crying. They just make it about themselves, right? And you're like, no, this is about me, mom, put away your tears. Right? This is focus on me. Don't just collapse in on yourself. Focus on me. That's my whole problem is you guys just think about yourselves all the time. Right? So it is a way of finding out how they respond to the truth. And if they are manipulative, they are not innocent. If they push the buttons to shut you up, they push the guilt and shame buttons that they installed. Because, of course, what should your father have said when you were 5 and you went up to want to play with your dad and he snapped at you and was cold to you and so on? What should your father have done? Well, the reason you remember that is not because of that, but because what didn't come after it, which was an apology. Which is, hopefully that day, certainly the next day, your father comes to you and says what?
Hey, I snapped at you. That was wrong. I'm sorry if that hurt.
No, not if that hurt, because it did hurt.
That's not the right way to act. I know that's hurtful to talk to people that way. Something like that, maybe.
Yeah, so your father would say, look, I've got the wrong priorities. I treated you really badly. Right. I treated you really badly because I'm dealing with adult stuff. Doesn't matter. It's going to be fine. But, I was thinking about this last night, kid. If my boss had come to me and asked me for something, would I have snapped at him? No.
Right. No.
If I was in a bad mood and a policeman pulled me over in the car, would I snap at the policeman and be cold and mean? No. So I'm perfectly capable of being nice or reasonable even when I'm in a bad mood, but I didn't do it with you. And that makes you feel unimportant. And that makes you feel really low in the pecking order, like I'll be nice to strangers. I mean, if I'm in a bad mood and we go to a restaurant, am I cold and do I snap at the waiter? No. So I'm perfectly capable of being nice to people when I'm in a bad mood. I just didn't do it with you, and that's going to make you feel like crap, and that is wrong. I put you low on the totem pole when you should be the most important thing to me. If there's anyone in the world I'm going to treat well when I'm in a bad mood, it's not my boss, it's not a waiter, it's not a cop, it's you. And I totally failed at that. And the last thing I'd want is for you to blame yourself for any of that. That's not your fault. That was my bad, 100%. Now, if your father had done that, do you think you would remember him snapping at you as a negative?
No, I remember that as like a very connected, kind of beautiful resolution.
Yeah, and your respect for your father would go up. Like I just did a call in last night, a live stream where some guy was telling me that my theory of ethics was like bad and wrong, and I was bizarre, and he wouldn't actually tell me the argument. He didn't have any logical objections. Now, if he'd have said, hey, you know what, I came on too strong, I'm realizing there are deficiencies in my knowledge, I apologize, let's reset, I would hugely respect someone like that. I don't mind that people make mistakes. God, we all make mistakes. What matters is how we deal with our mistakes. So the fact that your father snapped, yeah, okay, it happens, right? People can be snappy. I can be snappy. I'm sure you can be too. But what matters is not that we're snappy, that we say afterwards, "Ooh, you know what? I'm sorry about that. That was not right, and that was lazy on my part." And I don't want you to get any kind of impression that you did anything wrong. That's all on me, right? And if people say that, doesn't our respect for them go up enormously?
Absolutely.
So if your parents, when you talk to them, if they continue to be pushing your buttons, manipulative, avoidant, and incredibly skilled at avoiding the truth, then they're responsible. And
Right.
then you can let it go. Like if your father had Tourette's and he kept shouting out curse words, I mean, it might be unsettling, it might be difficult, but you wouldn't blame him morally, right? Because it's just an unfortunate neurological condition.
Right.
Now, of course, if you found out later that he'd been faking it the whole time, that would be a whole different matter, right? Because then he would have moral responsibility. So if your parents are cunning and manipulative and so on, then they're responsible. They're morally responsible because it's not involuntary. It's a choice. And so one of the reasons that I found it valuable to have these conversations with my parents was seeing how manipulative and selfish they were. Was like, okay, if I can't, I was about 30 or whatever, right? If I can't fix my parents when I'm 30, I sure as shit couldn't have fixed them when I was fucking 5. If I can't break through to my parents when I'm 30,
Makes sense.
I had no fucking chance when I was 12 or 15 or 18 or whatever, right? If with all of my adult knowledge and wisdom and independence, and I'd been studying philosophy for 15 years, I'd done self-knowledge work and therapy, and if with all of that, I can't get my parents to say one honest thing, with all of my independence and all of my adulthood and my mature adult brain, I can't get them to move 1 inch in the right direction. Whew, thank God. I'm never going to blame myself for anything that I did as a kid, because if I can't lift that weight when I'm 30, I sure as shit couldn't lift it when I was 5. And that's the liberation.
Yeah, that makes sense. If I can't like fix the relationship or fix them today, then I sure as shit couldn't do it when I was a child.
Yeah, if you can't get your parents to stop being aggressive with you when you're a grown 30-year-old man and they have no legal authority over you, if you can't quell your parents' aggression and manipulation when you're an adult and they have no power over you, there's no way you could have done it when you were a kid and they had infinite power over you.
Well, got it.
And that releases you from guilt, and it releases you from blaming yourself.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, brother. I think we're done here, at least for the time being. I'm obviously happy to talk again if that helps. And how was the conversation for you as a whole?
I feel like I have like some marching orders, and I'll probably listen back to this, especially the ending where we talked about the parental stuff. And yeah, the realization about like virtue and like love is it can only like exist where virtue exists. Um, yeah, it was a really good conversation, man.
All right. Well, I hope you'll keep me posted about how things are going. And I really do appreciate your openness today. And welcome to, as the old saying goes, the first day of the rest of your life.
Thanks, Stefan. Hey, quick question. Is this like conversation something I can listen back to?
Sure. Yeah, this is a public call, so it's going to go out as a podcast, and you can listen to it when it does.
Great. All right.
Thanks,
Thank
brother.
you, man.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I got you, man. I got you. It's so funny. Like you booked this show, and I'm like, hey, didn't we just? Is this a mistake? Did we? Anyway, so I'm glad to have that sorted out and understood and all of that. So yeah, tell me. Been an eventful day, I suppose. What's going on?
Dude. Yeah. Well, yesterday mainly, it was a very eventful day to say the least. So we got off our call, and I don't know. I guess like my what I w- my intention or whatever, like what I was thinking when I got off the phone was you. It's like, okay, I need to like think through and prepare how I'm gonna like confront my parents and talk to them about some of these things that have been kind of, uh, especially like more recently, bugging me about like childhood stuff. And yeah, so I was gonna, like, listen back to our call and whatever, but I remember you said, like, there's no wrong way to do it, so I just, like, we literally hung up our call. I think maybe, like, less than 10 minutes after that, I called my dad. That was, like, an hour, maybe give or take, an hour, and then mom called her, and that was, like, maybe 30 minutes, and, holy crap, like, I did not plan on getting my goal wasn't like, "Oh, I'm gonna, like, get angry and, like," but, man, like, I definitely, like, confronted them with some things that, like, really like, specific things that happened, and then also just, like, I was brutal, man. I was, like, honestly, I don't think I've ever, like, expressed the rage, especially when I was talking to my dad. I don't think I've ever I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'm just saying how it was, like, I was and it felt so real, like, there was no performative, like, nature to it. I'm telling you, I was, like the expression of rage that was coming from me came from, like, the deepest place. I can like, I've literally never experienced anything like that. Um, to be honest, it felt quite good, like, it felt, like I said, like, extremely real. Um, and like, I was I don't know if you want me to go deeper as far as, like, how that went, but, um,
No, no, listen, it's your call, man. Whatever you want to talk
yeah,
about is fine with me.
I can definitely, like, add more context and details.
Yep.
Um, so right away, like, I noticed so, like, when I called my dad, he was the first call, so I noticed right away, um I mean, it was like when you corner somebody about you corner somebody and they're trying, like, different ways to avoid really what I'm confronting them about, so there was 20 different occasions throughout the hour conversation. There was 20 different, 30 different occasions where, sometimes it was, I could tell like he was getting angry. Like that's the strategy he was trying to respond with. And I was like, and I just responded. I was like, no, 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 this is not your time to get angry. And then I was like, look, I'm calling you because this is like, this affects me today, man. Like this is stuff like, this and I would just, like I was pointing them at, like, a specific thing that happened or a specific behavior or a specific whatever, so sometimes he would respond, like, he would kinda start to ramp up and get angry, and I was like, "No, no, no. We're not doing that. This is not the time for that. This is not your time to get angry." And, um, like, I've never had that experience where I felt like I was able to control my thoughts and, like, my composure enough to really communicate in that way, and, like, in the past, I would, like especially when I was a kid, like, I would shut down or I would just, like, throw my hands up in the air and I would just feel defeated or something, and I'd be at a loss for words, I wouldn't have anything to say, but so sometimes he responded with anger, sometimes there was, like, deflection or he was, you know this is unusual. Like your brother, he never talks about this stuff with me, and I'm like, okay, that's so off the point. This isn't this. I'm literally not even. We're not talking about. I'm I'm talking about, and then again, I would just like bring it back to whatever I had most recently, like whatever behavior or event that I had most like recently brought up to him. I would just like kind of bring him back to that, and then I guess, yeah, that went on for a while. I think there was probably some more manipulative strategies that don't immediately come to my mind, but definitely like anger, kind of like distraction, again, like bringing up your brother want to do this, or, trying to like start to dive into a story or some explanation, trying to like rationalize things. And I don't know exactly like how I was able to kind of bring things back in, but I think I was probably like, "Look, I really this I don't want an explanation, like, an explanation doesn't help me today. An explanation doesn't heal me, and I told him, like, my business, everything in my life, the fact that I'm able to honestly, the fact that I survived through severe, severe drug addiction and, like, the f all of that, that's because of me, like, I had no help. He didn't even I asked him, "Were you aware when I was staying awake for 6, 7 days in a row, like, off amphetamines, and I was just totally on another planet. I was a completely in another world while living with him." And I said, "Were you aware of that?" And it over and over again, he kept, like, essentially just bringing up something that was totally unrelated, but it was tangentially, like, a l like, related on a, you know, but it wasn't really related at all. Anyway, and I could explain that as well. Like, I asked him, were you aware at the time when I was totally off the wall, completely in another world, living with you? I was living with you for months and months, whatever during that time. Like, you were the one around, you never ever there was no intervention. There was no like, is everything okay? There was no help. There was never a single time that I had someone like reach out and care for me from him specifically. Never. I got that. And I said, "Did you know? Did you know? Like at the time, did you know I was completely off the rocker? Like it, it would take a blind man to see that whatever was going on with my behavior at that time was so effed up, bro. Like I already mentioned, like staying awake for a week at a time, like you start hallucinating. I mean, the anxiety goes crazy through the roof. You cannot communicate. Like you cannot hold a sentence of a train of thought. I mean, you're totally off the rocker. So I held him accountable. Like you helped me nothing there, like, everything in my life, my business, coming back from that, going to therapy, everything, I did all that. I went to church and poured my heart out and sought healing, and I did everything I've done to literally just be alive and functional and, like, s have be able to support myself, like, everything was me. Everything was me, and I told him that, um and I told him, I thank you for feeding me and clothing me, and you gave me a place to sleep. But you know what? You had no guidance. You had no ability to show me what a mother, a relationship should be, how to counsel. You had no counsel. You had no. You were. You weren't even like you were not there. You were not there. You were not a father. You were not a counselor. You didn't show me how to live, and um towards the end, um, it was he kinda would oscillate. I'll say he's definitely like when I was younger, he had his temper was way worse. He was much more powerful with his, like, anger and manipulation. I think he was much more it was like a much more serious thing as I guess I've grown more independent. I think he's cooled out a little bit, but anyway, like, through that hour conversation with him yesterday, I he I know you're gonna ask me, like, about his apology and if he apologized. I don't know if he apologized. I wanna get into that obviously, but he did kind of oscillate between, like, this he would say, like, "This breaks my heart," and, like, "This eats me alive," and I appreciate the fact that it it wasn't like an emotional stone wall or just anger, but also I was like, "Look, that's great. It eats you alive. Doesn't change a damn thing right now." Like, I do appreciate it, but it doesn't help. Like, there's nothing there. Like, I can't it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything that happened. And, and so towards the end, I can't remember why he was really starting to cry and, like, I was starting to cry, and then I just started saying, "Why then? Why did this happen? Like, why did you why why did it?" Like, what? Why did it all go that way? And
And for so long.
it was my whole life. Like,
Yeah.
it was, it never ended. I know it never ended. Um, I mean, like I said, like in the last couple of years, like it's not, it's it's obviously not as bad as like when we were growing up, like in a war zone. But yeah, I mean, it might as well be my whole life essentially until like I basically left the house. So, like, obviously, logically, or he's gonna have a less of a influence, negative or positive. Just in general, he's had less pull over the last couple of years, and I think that has made him actually want to. Like, he's been, I don't know. He helped me buy a house a couple years ago. That's all in the past. I don't own that house anymore, but over the last couple years, it's almost like he's like trying to help me, I guess, or like be nice and stuff. Like it's definitely a different person over the last couple of years on some level than the openly unapologetically abusive, angry person that I grew up with. And anyway, I was like, dude, you married a woman, and I just went off on him. And it's funny enough, he's obviously he divorced my mom when I was like 10, so he was. I think both my parents were much more open to that criticism. Like they both know that I was raised in a war zone. They both know that their divorce, the kids were totally not they weren't thinking about us. So at least logically they understood that. Um anyway, just to kind of put closure to the phone call, um what I was saying, like I asked him like, why did you do this? Why did this happen? Like, why? Side note, I learned, I guess he married my mom because he accidentally impregnated her. So that was new information to me. My older brother, essentially, um, and he mentioned like maybe mom tricked him, like got pregnant on purpose and trapped him a little bit. Again, anything like that, I was like, look, dude, there's 100 reasons. I know you have a million reasons. I know, she trapped you. It's not your fault. No accountability there.
Sorry,
Got
that's
it.
his story that she trapped him?
It's his speculation. And yeah, that's his speculation. So
So, sorry, does he think that she purposefully got pregnant?
I think, I think it was a question in his mind. He doesn't know, know that for sure. There's no like
Okay.
verified. Yeah. But I kind of pointed out as well, just to be like, that's another thing that I saw him and her do was like kind of guilt shift, basically like try to bring someone else into the picture frame of like accountability there. Um, and over again, I just had to be like, I mean, I'll talk more about my mom here in a minute. That conversation was a little different,
Sorry, I
but
just want to make sure I understand. Did he say
please, yeah,
that when it comes to she trapped him or she got pregnant, does he think that she only pretended to take the pill or she put a hole in the condom or like,
nothing like that.
so they were
It was like
having unprotected sex and the inevitable consequences accrued and then he felt trapped by his own decisions?
100%. And that's exactly what I said. I said, okay, so you're saying you made a mistake and you doubled down on it. And he did say yes. He said essentially yes. He made that mistake and then he doubled down and 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 then of course he wanted to go into like, I didn't want to abort the baby, and like I thought I was doing the right thing. And I said, okay, dude, like, again, I can acknowledge that, but also now is not the time I like for sympathy for you. Like, this is more about like, like sometimes, dude, I was just yelling like, this fucking like, you ruined me. Like, I don't know exactly what I was saying, but like, you fucked me up, dude. Like, you fucked me up. And like, these are the decisions that led to it. And I don't care like if you felt like you were doing the right thing, like, honestly, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, that doesn't change anything. And at the very end, I was like, why did this happen? Why? And he was like, "Well, it's human, I guess it's human nature." And I said, "That's bullshit. Everybody has human nature. Every human has human nature. Not every human marries a fucking whore and has a damn war zone that they raise their kids in." And like,
So you refer to your mom as an effing whore. That's fairly
at
direct,
that
I
time,
suppose. No, listen, heat of the moment.
oh,
I
I
get that.
was,
I'm not nagging about it. I'm just pointing it out. But go ahead.
yeah, and there was some rage, man. So um, there was some language. Anyway, he said I chose it. So I said, why? That's bullshit. That's not why. Why? I'm
Sorry,
asking
when he
you
says
why.
I chose it, he means he chose to make these bad decisions.
100, yeah, he said
Yeah,
I
that doesn't
chose
really
it.
explain much, though.
It doesn't explain much. And I said, you know what? Oh, and at some point before that, he did say, all this happened. What can I do? Like, what can I do for you? And I said, you know what? I actually do appreciate that. I, that's probably the best thing you've said this whole conversation was, what can I do to help? And honestly, I don't have a fucking answer. Like, at this point, what can you do? Really not. As far as I can tell, I can't think of a damn thing. Um, but I kind of appreciated that, I guess. I mean, it seemed uniquely thoughtful for him. Um, it was a refreshing question versus the, um, you know, manipulative anger arising and things like that. But anyway, he said I chose it, and I said, um, I forgot where I exactly went. Oh, I think he said I chose it. I chose it, and maybe I acknowledged, um, like, okay, that's probably, that's a step that's more honest, I suppose I said, or something. And then he said, you know what, if there's nothing that can change, if there's nothing I can do to change it, then I don't understand why what's the point of us keep harping on the subject? And I said, you know what? I think that's a great way to end the conversation. And I just hung up. And then shortly thereafter, I called my mom. But that was the highlights from what I can remember.
Well, that is quite something. And what was your sort of feeling or thoughts at the end?
You know, I, to be quite honest, there was like a little pinch of fear in my guts when I hung up the phone, but I felt amazing. Like, I genuinely felt like, um, it came from, I don't know if I've ever been that real. Like, I don't know if I've ever channeled that level of real rage or rage in general, uh, or just real emotion. Like, I felt amazing. It felt quite empowering, and again, it felt really real. Like, there was no performative, I didn't feel like I was trying to manipulate some outcome. I felt like I was genuinely, like, my only intention was like, what the fuck, dude? Like, all this stuff I lived with it. And um yeah. And then also, again, I just felt like, damn, like, I don't know. Um Shortly after I spoke to him, I called my mom, and I just knew I just kind of wanted to get these. I don't want to think about like, oh, this phone call's coming up. I just wanted to make the calls. But I do remember just like a moment where I just like looking at the ground, looking at my feet, and I was like, what even is life right now? Like, um, what is gonna happen? The unknown, the great unknown ahead. I have no idea, but I do know, like, that felt good, and I know that was real, and I know, you know, I'm an. I think I'm an empathetic person, and I do oscillate between like wanting to be empathetic for these people, but then I do remember just like, I wouldn't want to hang out with these people if I met these people at a dinner party and they didn't have this blood relationship and all this like, if they were just neutral people who I just met. like randomly, and I didn't know them previously, but I met them at their current state today, or God forbid, their past state. I there would be no interest there. There's no common interests. There's no. I mean, Dad completely doesn't have interest in like how my life is going, dating, guitar practice, things that I'm interested. He has no interest in me, um, and he does want. I know. I was going to say I know he doesn't want to lose a relationship, but I think that's probably more just because it would just go on his record and like it would strike his ego, and he would be the parent who like his son, and he knows I have damn valid reasons. Like some of it he wants to avoid, and some of it I don't think he really truly understands it and acknowledges. But I know on some level he knows there's some truth in the things he was confronted with. So anyway, he doesn't want to lose his son. He wants to basically just have his ego intact and um, not have the shameful loss of a child's contacts on his record, I suppose. But I kind of lost where I was really directionally thinking. Kind of
Oh,
easy to get on
take your
a
time. Take your time.
yeah, easy to kind of get on a tangent. So many, so much, but yeah, yeah. I guess I just never really, definitely never had these type of conversations, and Dad did like after we hung up, and I told him I think that's a great place to end this conversation. I hung up. He called me back. I was on the phone with my mother at the time, so I didn't answer or didn't call him back. He called me again today. I texted him. I said, I don't want to talk. I'll reach out to you when I'm ready. Appreciate you understanding." And I think he just responded, "Thanks."
When he reached out, did he just say, like, I want to talk? Did he leave a message or what happened?
When he reached out again today,
Yeah.
I didn't want to answer. I was like coming home from work, and I just honestly just don't want to talk. I feel very exerted. I feel like the things that happened yesterday, like I just want to kind of like, for the most part, like I value this conversation because I feel like my intention here is like I think I'll get a little insight and maybe some counsel and guidance. Like that's why I booked the call. Um, I don't really feel like using energy though to like talk to him. I didn't feel like answering. So,
All right. So that was your dad and your mom.
oh God.
Oh, no.
Um, I did appreciate, for some reason with my dad, I felt like I was able to like really channel the real pain and like I while he while there was clearly no question, like I identified like, okay, this is an attempt at manipulating the conversation to like, blame someone else or literally turn the blame on me, or shame or guilt or whatever. Like, while there was that with him, there was also like a really deep pondering of something really real, that I felt really, it was really nice to express. And also there was some level of connection points while mom was like, oh goodness, there was literally no, um, everything, you bring one thing up, like, when me and my brother I was 10, my brother was like 12 or something. I walked in on, possibly me and my brother behind me. I think I opened the door. There was some guy in my mom's bed. She was like recently divorced. She was keeping this guy in her room as a secret while her two kids were in the same apartment. I'm like, that's so inappropriate. I'm telling her, like, what the hell was that? Keeping a guy a secret, and we're so young. Like, you're clearly during that time you're spending with him. fucking him or whatever your guys are doing. And I'm just adding the details because it adds a little color perhaps. But
And sorry,
anyway,
that was a friend of your mom's.
all I knew is I saw him that one time in her bed in the morning. He was, shirt off in her bed. I opened the door, saw him. I was like, "What the fuck?" Uh, the next day, or maybe that evening, me and my brother got airsoft guns, pats on the back. We never talked about it. So I was like, "What the?" So that's the first thing I confronted her with. I'm like, "What the fuck was that?" Um, and and everything. There was some story, there was some explanation, there was some you're not getting it, you're not understanding. There was some, I'm not saying you're lying or I'm not saying that's not what you remember. And I'm like, okay, mom, I know what gaslighting is. And so I just kept saying, okay, so again, no accountability. And then I would ask her, like, okay, so you brought this guy into our house, you married clearly me and hated him. My brother, I if you can, I'd appreciate that bleeped out. I don't okay. So, yeah, me and my brother, um, clearly me and my brother, we hated your we hated that man. She married this man. We hated him from the damn week that he came into the house. He never had affection towards us. He never was compassionate or caring or nurturing towards us. Not a single dippity do, none of it. And I said, we hated him. And I said, and she said, "Oh, I didn't know that." Okay. And I said, "Okay, no accountability there." Well, you know what? Clearly, you're a mother. Where is you don't pay attention? You have a 10-year-old kid, a 14-year-old kid, whatever we were at the time. You didn't know we hated him? Like, where
And it was
were
years
you?
and
Like,
years, right? He was there, right?
oh, it was 3, 4, I don't even know, 4 years, 3 years before they moved away. We hated him. We hated every second of it. I mean, literally, maybe the first 2 times we met him, like, literally maybe the first week, we're open-minded, we're kids, we're like, "This is an interesting thing," some new person. Immediately, we hated him. Like, past those maybe first couple times where we're just, like, feeling him out and figuring out, like, our emotions around it, and we're figuring out what we think, and, we're not really discussing it maybe that first week, so we're just, like, processing everything. We After that, we both hated him. We always talked about it. It was constantly something we never he smelled bad. He never treated us with compassion. There was nothing not pleasant about him. It was totally we hated him. And I said, "You know what? You didn't know that. How could you not know that?" It was, and like you said, it was so long. And this is how she responded. She said, "You know what? I asked you." And by that time, I mean, it's just so much gymnastics of, like, no accountability, and then there's some something that to address for me to, like, you know, respond to. And at that point, I think I was just maybe exhausted to where I really didn't have a response. And now today, I just thought about it and I'm like, okay, well, isn't that interesting? Your 12-year-old kid didn't feel safe, to be honest with even if that's true, which I don't know. Maybe, you know, if that's true, she asked us and we told her, no, we like him or whatever. If that's true, isn't that telling that we didn't feel safe around you? We didn't feel safe to just like we hated him. They're like no questions. Every day we talked about it damn near. Like it was just we hated him. It was a stale conversation. We stopped talking about it because it was just so there was nothing to talk about. There was like no it's just we hate this guy. We hate living with him. We hate being around him. Um and I just thought that today. I'm like, and you know what? Usually I would beat myself up and like some part of me, sure, you get the thought where you're like, I wish I would have thought to say that. Like I wish I would have thought to say, your kids didn't even feel safe around you to tell you the truth. And but you know what? I I brought up six, five, six specific things. There was not one accountability, not an acknowledgement of accountability whatsoever. It was rationalization. It was, y- I'm not saying you're not remembering it correctly. And I could not listen. I just kept cutting her off. I was like, Mom, fucking stop. Like, got it. Got it. No accountability. You have a story for it. You know, uh, I don't even want to go. Like, don't take me like, so, and I and it got to the point where she was playing the victim, where it's like, I'm willing to have an honest conversation, and this is like attack it I feel like this is more like you calling to attack me and stuff. And like, of course that's infuriating. Like, of course a part of me is just like, oh, you want people to come into alignment and to be able to, like, come to an agreement. With her, it's like, you know, I would love to say I have, like, 100%. It's like, there's just no hope. Like, there's literally no hope. Of course, like, I as the way I'm feeling is there is in reality, there's, like, 0.01% of hope, just to be totally honest with you, Stefan. Um, but it was crazy. I mean, I felt like there was no connection, and it was just like there's just like no starting point. It's like, hey, you know, what the fuck happened here? Like, let's talk about this. Why did this happen? And then it's immediately like, well, in that situation, wasn't actually that he reached out to me, but you know, I wasn't gonna not reach out. It's like, shut the fuck up. Please shut the fuck up. Like, um, and I don't think I told her directly, like, "Please shut the fuck up," but I pretty much was like, "Okay, just stop. We can move on, like, got it. Understood." Rationalization, coming inbound rationalization, inbound, no accountability. I'd like to move on. And then towards the end, again, it was just like the victim card had kind of, like, been brought up, and perhaps we both I certainly realized, like, okay, I I don't think we're really getting anywhere. And she felt attacked, like she was felt like the victim. Um, Obviously, that's her coping, um, perhaps a strategy, so she doesn't actually have to face reality. And then, since since yesterday, like I said, I thought of that response to her, and I thought of other things. I'm like, Mom, you and Dad got divorced. You would smoke cigarettes all day. You'd be out on the porch, totally off in your own world. You were hanging out with some other lady, like at the pool. You weren't even a damn mom. Like, you weren't around. You didn't want to be a mom. I. It's funny because Stefan, and I don't mean to just ramble on, but I'm here because I'm trying to just like pour everything out and like really get insight. And I I do trust you'll take it where is valuable. But I just like, yeah, anyway, she just wasn't there, man. She wasn't. Oh, I was gonna say, like, I remember in a video I heard you say, like, you were referring to mom as like you had a job to do. Like, you had a job, you signed up for it when you had kids. That's kind of a responsibility you signed up for. I remember being a kid and being like, Mom, this is your job. Like, I would tell her that. And that was like a red button I pushed because she would get really pissed. And that's the truth. She didn't wanna sh she despised her her job. She despised that responsibility. What she loved was being on her phone, smoking cigarettes off on her own, collecting checks from my dad, watching TV all damn day, doing the bare minimum to bring us to school and put shit food on the table made from fucking unhealthy bullshit. Um, if I should, yeah, I guess I don't mean to just belabor everything, Stephen. Help me.
Well, it's a lot to process, and I appreciate that. And this is, I think, the first time in like 20 years or whatever that someone's had the confrontation or the talk and called right back. And I think that's very cool. And I'm really glad that you're doing that. So the plan, right? So when I say you can't really plan for it, doesn't, you can sort of rehearse in your mind what you want to say and things like that, but you can't really plan for honesty, right? You can't plan and say, well, this is how I'm going to strategically approach the question of honesty, because, honesty is supposed to be just kind of direct and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's why it's interesting that and it seems like a positive thing that you went straight into the conversation and you had a lot of passion about it, right? Because it's the outrage of recognizing that nobody screws their own life up entirely. I'm not saying you've screwed your whole life up entirely, but what I mean is that nobody just makes decisions in isolation, particularly when you're a relatively young man such as yourself, that you are launched into the world with a particular set of values or a lack of values that has a strong impact on how you behave. I mean, for instance, I dated around quite a bit when I was younger, but I was never taught anything about sort of pair bonding. I was given no particular education or feedback on how to do relationships. I mean, I think my generation, sort of Generation X, are just completely abandoned to just, whatever the fuck you want to do. Like society just completely given up. The only people who had any kind of moralizing had absolutely no credibility. And so when I was doing what I was doing when I was younger, which was not obviously ideal and was not great for me, wasn't great for others, and I've sort of tried to pass that wisdom along as best I can, but I didn't just wake up and say, hey, I'm going to be kind of hedonistic. It was just, okay, well, that's the default setting, and the absence of values in society had nothing to offer me. So with regards to the outrage, it's like, I didn't know what I was doing, and you were supposed to tell me what to do. You were supposed to give me some virtues, some values, some way to live. That was going to work. That was going to be effective. That was going to stop me from not having to reinvent the wheel and figure out all the practical and rational ethics from the ground frickin' up. And I think that sort of outrage of you dumped me in the middle of the ocean and expected me to make it to shore is something that
Yes.
makes sort of sense. I'm not trying to characterize your experience for you, but that's kind of what I'm getting.
Definitely, because like even yesterday, I remember thinking because you were kind of explaining how the conversation. You kind of gave me an example of like, this is how a conversation goes, and you say, "Hey, Dad, like there were these things, and they weren't really that great for me, and it didn't feel very great to be around them, and I think probably it had a little effect on me." And so like that's kind of the framework I went into it with, just having that in mind. And I think when you said that, my initial instinct was, well, that's not 100% true. Like, it's like, well, yes, that I forgot exactly the words that almost like my gut instinct was like, well, they're not totally responsible. And it's like, you know what? That's so ridiculous. Like they played a part. It was definitely like I would definitely not want my kids around this shit. Like there's clearly things that are not moral, that are not pleasant, that are not like nice to be around. And like, so I'm just seeing these interesting things where it's like, I'm very quick to empathize and like think, you know, yeah, quick to empathize with them. But then like, I have very fucking real shit that it's not just like lack of empathy, it's like lack of care, lack of thoughtfulness, lack of intervention in the past. And it's again, it's not a isolated event. It's 30 years of damn patterns, man. And yeah, man. So
Well, and I'm not mad at my mom and my dad for not teaching me Japanese because, they never pretended to. Like, they never, teach you Japanese. So, what I am mad about is the fact that society expects me to live by particular moral rules, but they never really taught me anything practical or useful about those moral rules. Other than, well, you'll get punished if you don't do it and all of that sort of stuff, which is basically just saying that morality is just being subjugated to people in power. Like you just do it out of fear because people in power could screw up your life if they want. They can hold you back in school. They can fail you. They can not let you into university. They can hit you, or I got caned as a kid and things like that. So what bothered me is that society gave me all of these rules without giving me any rational reason to believe in any of these rules, which just means that the only reason to obey rules is you're scared of people in power who are going to screw you up. So I'm basically just supposed to obey power rather than have actual morality. And that really bothered me, that I was punished for not following rules, but nobody ever explained to me what the rules were for, how they were derived. It was just do it or else. And at some point, you just kind of rebel against that as a man. And I think in particular, like, I just don't like to be ordered around and just be threatened all the time. And in the absence of understanding the moral rules, we just rebel against those rules. In the same way, you order any reasonably self-assured person or anybody with a decent sense of self-esteem, you just order them around, they're just going to push back. And, like every now and then I'll joke with my wife and say, well, you may disagree, but I'm afraid the patriarchy is ordering it. And of course she just laughs, and it's kind of funny. I can't make her do anything, not that I'd want to, but it's just not really a thing. And so, yeah, when we sail out into the world and we don't have any respect for the rules because they've just been inflicted, and they're completely hypocritical. The school stuff is all just crazy hypocritical, which is, nobody ever cares about what you want to learn. Nobody ever cares about what motivates you. You're just supposed to sit there in the stupid desk for 7 hours a day, and then they pile you up with homework, and none of it makes any sense. And it's all just stupid and dominant. And it was real clear that it was for the benefit of the teachers and not the benefit of the students. And none of the teachers seemed to love knowledge or love teaching or anything like that. They were just a bunch of mostly female dunderheads who just got stressed and tense and yelled at people and sent them to the principal. And it was all just pathetic. And I'm supposed to respect this system. The system shows no respect for me at all. And I'm just a cog in a machine to be ground up into paste and spat out in some Pink Floyd awful tube. And so, yeah, it's just terrible all around and no respect for anything. And then what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to invent ethics from the ground up? Well, I guess eventually that's what I did, but that's not the most common response or approach to these things. You just self-medicate and go for fun because there's no structure or rules that you can respect anywhere. Sorry, a long ramble, but I hope that makes some sense.
No, I agree 100%, and it does make me wonder because obviously I do want a family, so I despise all that wasted time I spent in school, literally 7 freaking hours a day for 12 years? Imagine I could have learned 5 languages, 5 instruments.
Oh, yeah, you could have been like, I lived to go to the woods and build tree houses and forts and, learn various skills. Yeah. And I could have just been out there, Lord of the Flies in the woods and having a blast and learning some practical things. And yeah.
And so I agree 100%.
So, it certainly is true that you are responsible for your own life as an adult. I get that for sure. But if I suddenly wake up in Japan and no one ever taught me Japanese, then I have, especially when people know that I'm going to move to Japan, right? If I'm going to move to Japan and nobody teaches me Japanese, then I wake up in Japan, then I've a reason to be mad. Like, why the hell didn't you prepare me? Especially since everyone says that's their job, is to prepare me for adulthood. Sorry, go
exactly.
ahead.
No, exactly. They don't just know you're going to move to Japan. They're responsible for preparing you for Japan. I think. Isn't that the... Yeah.
And then they punish you for not knowing Japanese. They punish you for not knowing morals and not accepting morals.
God.
And they didn't... I got taught 0 fucking morals as a child, which is one of the reasons I was a bit of a thief in my early teens, and I, had no problem lying. I was just in a state of nature. Society is just a shit heap that exploits you, yells at you, hits you, controls you, bullies you. Now, of course, the kids get drugged these days because Boys can't sit still for 7 hours a day, so not catatonic females. And so, do you find school boring? Here's a gill full of amphetamines to shut down your brain so you can survive this uninspiring, embarrassing, boring hellscape. And boys in particular don't like to be ruled by females. It's just a pride thing. We can say it's sexist, we can say but to respond to males, boys respond to males a lot better than they respond to females, and to be bullied and dominated and yelled at and controlled by endless females throughout most of your childhood, it's just terrible, and it's demoralizing, and it feels embarrassing, and so on. And so, I mean, I responded much better to male teachers and to Boy Scouts and things like that. So for you, I mean, what did you graduate from childhood with in terms of how to structure and organize your life? Nothing.
Nothing. I got a lot of like I got the opposite of what I needed, like for sure to that. But like I said, like literally, I took the risk, to start my business. I took the risk. I dropped out of school. That was not dad's. Like everything that's turned out good was it's my decision directly in the face of, a lot of the times like what my dad would say, or I mean, mom wasn't even freaking around. So, and I wouldn't want, like you said, I wouldn't even want a woman to tell me about my business, of course. But um, yeah, I got a lot of bad direction and misled. And finally, I started to like, when I got sober, I was like, okay, I can kind of trust my intuition. And when I take risks, it seems like, you know, if it's, if it's thought out, or, sometimes you just get a gut feeling and you just send it. And, I've learned like it's okay to just trust that. And it seems like when I do that, I've, I mean, it's brought me to essentially where I am today, which is, um, thankfully not dead from my drug addiction, or, could have ended. So, yeah.
It seems to me, and of course, you were in the conversation. Obviously, I wasn't. So correct me if I'm going even 1 degree off course. But it seems to me that your parents responded to your criticism of them in a hedonistic way. So a hedonist will just try to minimize pain. You can't maximize pleasure when being criticized, unless you're some weird masochist, right? But when you
Right.
criticize a hedonist will simply try to minimize pain in whatever way they can. So, for instance, if you have to have I don't know, I had a cyst out a while ago, just a little cyst on just below my rib, and it was fine, but I decided to take it out. So, they did local. I didn't put me under. It was just a little local thing, just like 5 or 6 stitches, and they put the lidocaine in, right? They put the local anesthetic in, and that wasn't to make me happy. That was just to minimize the pain and discomfort of this. Again, it's not even an operation, just a little incision. And when you criticize people who are hedonists, they work frantically to minimize any pain they may be experiencing, any responsibility, any self-attack, any guilt, any self-recrimination, any shame. And it seems to me that your parents put out a lot of fog and misdirection and counterattacks and collapsing in on themselves so that you had to hold them up rather than hold them accountable. It seems to me that they reacted in kind of a hedonistic way, but obviously, what was your thought?
Yeah, I do agree. I had this thought like either last night or today. I was like, there's this concept of repentance in Christianity. And I actually do at some point in the conversation later on, I suppose I'm interested in talking a little bit about like Christianity um, versus um, philosophy, just because I really don't feel connected to Christianity. And I heard you talking about like the alpha male concept, God being the alpha male, and how it's emasculating, and it like the whole submission there's like the submission aspect and the power dynamics of everything. Basically, I mean, that all is kind of like, yeah, it kind of sounds, it resonates. And I don't feel called to like go back to church, but I do. I mean, right now it's like, I don't feel any temptation to like, act hedonistically because this is like directly on my mind, but I want some counsel or guidance on like how to walk this path with a practice of sorts, perhaps, or something where, I'm not going to be going to church every week. So, like, how do I incorporate these, if I even can, morals into my
I'm happy to
life?
do that. I'll bookmark that. If we can just go back for a
Cool.
sec, I just want to close off
Please,
that
yeah,
loop.
take me back.
So, with your father, when you had criticisms, what were his sort of top? Well, not if you when you had your criticisms, what were his top responses?
Oh, yeah. All this stuff I said of shift blame, bring up some other name in the conversation,
Oh,
start
like your
getting
brother would
fired,
never do something like this, right?
brother, or start talking about mom. He's
Oh, like
happy
your
to,
mother was responsible for this and so on, right?
yeah, like, he's very, like, it was names would come up, or even me. It's like, I mean, this is so when it was happening in the moment, I'm just like, this is fucking dirty. Like, this is evil, man. Like, he he responded at some point. He was like, "What is even going on with you?" Like, you know,
Yeah, sorry. If you could just remind you
is
to stay off the names, I'd appreciate that. But
I'm
no,
sorry,
it's
I'm
fine. That's
causing
fine.
you
We'll sort it out.
editing.
Yeah, I'll edit it out afterwards.
Thank you.
So yeah,
I
this like your brother wouldn't do it. It's your mother's fault. I didn't even want to get married. She got pregnant. What is this all about? What's the purpose of this? What are you even doing? Why is this a problem now? Like all of this stuff is just designed to stop you
Yep,
from
yep.
doing things that may cause him a feeling of guilt or self-recrimination.
And it's all like it gets him off topic, right? I mean, it gets
Well, it's trying to get you off topic. It's just trying to get you.
exactly,
It's trying to get
exactly.
you to. It's kind of like if
Empathize with
it's
some other thing. Like,
empathize. It's trying to stall you from your purpose and get you to think about what you're doing rather
yeah.
than do it. Right. So
Oh, and I did
if
it.
someone, if it, like you, sorry to interrupt. So you're inside your body and
Sorry.
you're speaking from inside your body. You're connected to your anger. Like you are living vividly in that moment. And what the purpose is, I think, of what some of what your dad was doing, maybe your mom too, was to say, I want to take you outside of your body and have you observe yourself critically rather than
A
criticize
hundred,
me. Like, what
a
are you even
hundred
doing?
percent,
Right. And then
a
it's
hundred
to
percent.
pull you out of your body, which is the seat of your anger and yourself and your criticism and your moral sense and your outrage, pull you out of your body. And just look at what you're doing. Look at the outside. Your brother wouldn't
A
do this.
hundred.
It's not my fault. And what are you even? So it's trying to pull you out of your body. And a lot of defusing people's like legitimate upset,
Jeez.
pull you outside your body and throw you in orbit about yourself so that it disconnects you from your anger, it disconnects you from your outrage, it disconnects
And
you
it
from your feelings. And then you look at yourself like, oh God, maybe I am doing something wrong. What is the purpose of all of this? What am I actually doing? And then you're not there. Like you're not in your body anymore. And like ripping you out of your body and throwing you in critical orbit about yourself is foundational to countering these attacks, so to speak, or these criticisms.
I can say that is without question. I mean, I vividly remember as you're saying, it's to get you to like start to look at yourself and get you out of your. I mean, I experienced that, and in particular, the conversation with mom. She's cunning. She she's a cunning Jew. I have some of that in me. She, she is she is knows how to manipulate. She is, and it worked. I can tell you. I remember when we were talking yesterday. I came out of my body, and I had perspective as well. I was aware that it was happening. I was aware that it was happening, and that's why, like, even though I didn't feel like I wasn't as connected to my anger with her, and especially by the end, I was just like, you know what, whatever's going on here, we're not. It's just I'm hitting a brick wall. Like whatever's happening, this isn't it. And and holy crap, man, that's like I physically felt that. I physically, mentally, I experienced what you just said. So
And that's what the drugs were for too, right? Was to get you out of your body. So why didn't your parents interfere with your drug addiction? I would argue because the drug addiction was to get you out of your body, to get you out of your anger, to get you out of your outrage, and to give you an
wow,
otherworldly, disembodied sense of self so that you couldn't connect with the anger. That's why they didn't interfere with it, I imagine, because interfering with it would have had you reground yourself in your body, reconnect with your anger, and come back at them with some criticisms.
You know, it makes too good of sense to object to that. Um, and it makes 100% sense. And, when I was on drugs, I had so much shame around the drugs as well. And I was so disconnected. I didn't have a moral authority to start pointing my fingers at, or definitely didn't feel I had a moral authority at that time to point fingers and hold people accountable around me because I was zoning. I was off in my own little um, exploration of drugs. So,
And tell me, so
but man,
the
that's
top three
crazy.
strategies of your mom?
Um, Definitely like avoiding accountability. Everything was just avoid accountability. Um, I honestly, I just kept interrupting her. I didn't even let her talk because I, she would start. I would say, hey, this thing that happened back in the past. Why did this happen? Why did this thing happen? And then she would go into some explanation or some recount of how she remembers, or, she would start telling me how it happened and some explanation. And as, the first time it happened, I gave her 30 seconds or 15 seconds. I'm just like, please stop. Like, you know, uh, I just said, you know what? Got it. You know, if you have some other version of that story, got it. y- if you're not going to acknowledge and take accountability and, like if you don't remember it the same way, if you remember it some different way and you have some explanation, you know, no, like we can just move on because, you know, we both know, I know what gaslighting is, and, um, I don't know if I told her, I know my memory or whatever, but I was just like, look, we don't even have to I basically was just like, we don't even have to go down this route. If you have some other explanation, um, and then definitely the anger as well, and also trying to put a mirror on me, like you know, this seems more like an attack, and like you're attacking, and like so again, that's exactly what you said. Like she was putting the mirror, trying to put a mirror on me, and again, it's uh, she. Honestly, I think she wears a mask. I don't know if I think maybe she has some real reactions to things or some emotional responses. She's a woman. I'm sure she has some of that, but it's like a mask. And I just didn't feel like I made any headway at all with her. Wasn't productive, no doubt.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
very interesting answer.
All right.
And when
So,
I say,
sorry, you were talking about. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when I say I made no headway, I mean there was no acknowledgement of, aside from her acknowledging, like, okay, the divorce, it was toxic. Like, aside from some very surface level acknowledgement of like, okay, that was our divorce. That was probably unhealthy for you guys. There was no deep, like, repentance, tears of like, oh, I feel so bad about There was not like, not even evidence of that. Like, the 0% of that. So,
Yeah, it's funny because there's a general theory that goes something like this: that everyone has a conscience, and if you do great wrong, the bad feelings are sort of buried in your conscience. And if you have like a real honest and genuine conversation about bad things or wrong things, that somebody will connect with that guilt or those bad feelings or whatever it is. And I am not convinced of that. I mean, maybe it's true for some people, but I think there's a lot of people who just don't really have any conscience at all. And they kind of want to avoid everyone understanding that. But, I mean, sorry, to take a silly example, like an extreme example, like there's some serial killer, is he ever going to weep over the damage he's done? Well, no, because he's got no conscience and he's an evil sadist or whatever it is, right? So the idea that there are people, and it's kind of a Christian idea too, where you say, well,
Right.
everyone has a conscience deep down, and the soul is there, and all you have to do is, have these conversations and connect with people, and keep digging and keep staying in the conversation, and eventually, there's oil down there. You just have to keep drilling. Sometimes it's further down. Sometimes you got to go through some shale. But man, oh man, if you keep drilling, there's going to be
Yeah.
oil. There's going to be conscience. There's going to be connection. And I don't really think that's true. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm not. People say that 10 commandments are written on your hearts. Like, and that's your conscience. In your conscience, you have this moral standard, and God wrote it on your heart. Like, that's a very common Christian belief.
Yeah, and I don't see the evidence for it. And of course, I mean, scientifically, you can actually scan people's brains and you can see the people who don't have a conscience. They don't have a conscience. They don't respond in any empathetic way. The parasympathetic nervous system doesn't kick in. They don't have mirror neurons that have them experience what other people experience. Like, they just don't have a conscience. And you'll never drill for oil in a sandy beach or something like that. That old line from the Meatloaf song. Like, there is nothing down there. It's like my dad was a gold geologist and he had to leave England and Ireland and go to Africa because there ain't gold in the ground in England and Ireland, at least none worth drilling for. And the idea that, just stay in the conversation, you'll break through, it's like, to me, it's like, well, your father lost his arm when he was 5 years old, a horrible industrial accident, or ran across Antifa while not reading Marx, or some shark attack. He lost his arm. But don't worry, God will regrow his arm. You just need to talk to him deeply enough. And to me, like, there are people, of course, the thalidomide babies and so on, like, they never developed any arms. They're physically missing arms. You can't talk them into getting arms later. And it's like 13 or 16 different parts of the brain that all need to develop in the right way to develop empathy. A lot of people don't have it. I don't know with regards to your parents, but one of the most dangerous ideas to me with just about any religion, Christianity, of course, I know better than most, is this idea that, well, everybody has a conscience, everybody has a soul. Some people lose their way, and you just have to invest hundreds or thousands of hours into connecting with them to get them to reconnect with their soul and with their conscience and with God. And it's like, but I think you're trying to talk people into growing arms which never developed. Like, if they had some genetic thing, whatever, they just never developed any arms. You can't just talk them into getting arms later, and you can't just talk people into having a conscience. And I think a lot of the manipulation that seemed to be going on with your parents, and again, I don't know the degree, and obviously you're the first and final arbiter of this as a whole, but it seems like they have a guilty secret, which is they really don't have a conscience. And if they don't have a conscience, or don't have much of a conscience, then the more you press for them to exhibit characteristics of having a conscience, the more tense and upset they're going to be. Like, if you have counterfeit money and somebody's, hey, I'm going to scan this through the counterfeit detection machine or something, people get pretty antsy about that because they're going to get caught. And I think that's some of the avoidance that might have been going on.
Makes sense. And when you say they don't have a conscience, that also means they don't have like some moral code that guides them, and they're not able to empathize, meaning they're not able to, nor probably do they care to or want to, but they don't deeply feel for the way that they affect other people, nor do they want to, nor do they care
Well,
to.
at this point, nor can they, right? So people without a conscience, and again, I'm not saying they don't have any conscience, whatever, but it would seem to me, based upon their parenting, that it's somewhat limited. So people without a conscience, they can follow rules, right? So what board games did you play as a kid?
Shit, can't even think of. We didn't
Monopoly
really
or
play
Risk
much.
or...
Sure. I mean, yeah, sure. We played some Monopoly.
Yeah, okay. So you followed rules in Monopoly because that's just the game, right? But they weren't moral rules. I mean, it may have been moral to follow the rules, but, like in Monopoly, some people say if you land on go, you get $400. Some people say, no, it's just $200 or whatever, right? And that's just a convention that you make at the beginning of the game or something like that. Or some people say, well, you have to go all the way around the board before you can buy any properties, just to mix things up a little bit. Other people say that's not needed. Or like, in chess, the pawn can only go 2 forward at the beginning, then 1 forward can only take diagonally. And if it gets to the end, you get to choose a piece that's been taken. These are just rules of the game. They're not moral rules. Now, of course,
Right.
somebody should follow the rules. I mean, you shouldn't steal from the bank if you're playing Monopoly, right? Unless you're central banking. But so people without a conscience, you say, well, they don't have any moral rules. So they'll follow rules, but not because of morality, but just because that's how you play the game. So they'll say, okay, well, I shouldn't go and steal, but not because they have empathy for the shopkeeper or stealing is somehow morally wrong. It's like, well, stealing will, I just get arrested or, it's bad for my reputation. It's expensive. It's time consuming. So it's just cost efficient to not steal or whatever it is. So they're following the rules. And maybe some of those we would say are moral rules, but they're just following the rules in the same way that you and I follow the rules of chess. Like, okay, well, this is how you play the game, and I guess I'll follow these rules. If I can get some real advantage without getting punished, and without I don't have to follow the rules as much, then they'll do that. Which is why with children, they don't get punished for not following the rules because they're in control of the whole situation, so they can just do whatever they want.
Right.
It's like if you're playing chess against yourself, I guess you can cheat. Nobody's going to really complain. I mean, it may not be the best way to play the game, but so that's sort of what I'm sort of probing for is I don't think that it doesn't seem like they've treated you much like an independent sovereign entity, just like themselves and, treat you as the way they want to be treated.
Oh, no.
And so on. And so that's what I'm kind of looking for myself, or if I were in your shoes. That's what I was looking for when I confronted my parents. I was just looking for, are they just upset because I'm breaking the rules, or they're not getting away with something, or if they've been caught, they've made a miscalculation, right? If you have no moral sense, then you can say, you know what, I'm gonna take a bag of coffee home from work, or something like that, right? It's no big deal, whatever, right? And then but if you get caught and exposed, then you're kind of humiliated, like, oh man, I thought I was going to get away with it, and now I'm not, and you'll sort of kick and wriggle. But the only thing is, like, you made a calculation and it didn't work out, and so they made a calculation that they could just be your parents and you could be their kid, and they didn't have to really do anything to be moral parents and heavily invested in their kids and so on. And they made a calculation, and that calculation hasn't paid off. So now they're kind of caught, and they're frustrated and annoyed, but just because they made a miscalculation, a big one, obviously, random variables like internet philosophers can change the change the equations 1%. And so that's what I'm kind of trying to figure out is, are they going to look at you and say, we did you great harm, and you said this has been my whole life, so, you lost, some numbers of years to drugs and hedonism and so on, which has something to do with how you were raised, quite a bit, I would say, to do with how you were raised. So are they going to empathize with you over their lack of consideration for you and what it has done for you? Or are they just going to try and change the rules or play the game again or have a do-over or a mulligan and try and get back something that they miscalculated on?
Yeah, I think as you're saying that, the honest truth is, like, even with my dad, where I did feel like, he texted me and he was like, I need to be better, and whatever. And like, the honest truth is, like, I'm the one who, dude, I'm freaking tired today. Like, I woke up with sore legs because I was pacing and exerting emotions yesterday, like out the wazoo. And like, the only reason that I'm getting any give, and obviously, like we've talked about, along with a bunch of manipulation and stuff, but it's like I'm getting a little bit of like a respect, I suppose, or like I'm getting a little bit. It's because of me. Like it's because, like you said, they miscalculated. They've been confronted with this new situation, and it's more of like, okay, let's manage the situation. It's not like some revelation that they had and they're coming to me and it's like gravely repentance for their decision. It's like, no, like I'm the one again, just like I built everything good. It's like, okay, any healing here, any truth, like this is all coming up because of me. This is not something you've chosen. This is like a situation you're just, it's like when you get in trouble and you cry a little, not because you had a change of heart, but because you're facing consequences now. You're facing reality. You're the same person now. You're the same. I mean, you're just showing evidence of you're upset with, because of the consequences, and you're just, that's how I kind of see it. What I was thinking of when you were saying that.
Let me just share with you a very brief story because, I haven't made it about me for 5 minutes. So I know that's really important for you. Just make whoever you're talking with, make it all about themselves. But I think this will help. So many years ago, it was not a pound of coffee, but many years ago, an employee stole from me. And I confronted that person, and it was not in private. I tried talking about them in private, but they just kept denying. And anyway, so eventually I confronted them in public, and that person got angry at me and said, it's the way you did it. Maybe I was in the wrong, but you shouldn't have done it this way and this way and this way, right? And I'm like, bro, I didn't want to do it at all.
Right.
You think I want to come into work and confront someone about stealing? That's no fun. Like, how about you have some compassion for the situation you put me in? Why do I have to be your conscience? Why do I have to tell you something as basic and obvious as stealing is wrong? And it's sort of like if you confront some cheating girlfriend and she's like, oh, how could you do this in public? And she makes it all about how you did it rather than what she did. And what I mean by that
Right.
is what I would look for is, we're sorry that you had to do this. We're sorry that we put this burden upon you to bring, an ounce and a half of honesty to the family interactions and situations, if that makes sense. Like, this should not be your job. It should not be your job to parent your parents and to say, we need to be honest. We need to take responsibility. We need to be mature. We need to be wise. We need to be moral. That shouldn't be your job within the family at all. Like, not even a little bit. Should not be your job at all. You should not have had to carry this burden. You should not have had to do this. And I did eventually break through to the guy after just saying it's impossible too, but I did finally get him to understand that his outrage or his upset or, I'll be better, even the promises to be better. It's like, you should have some sympathy and empathy for putting me in this position, right? It's like some shop owner does not want to detain a shoplifter and call the cops. That's not what they got into being a shop owner for. That's not fun for them. You're putting them in a difficult, awkward position that's going to cost them sales. And that's what I'm just sort of wondering about. So tell me, what do you think would be the ideal response that you could get from either parent at the moment?
Well, what you just said is really interesting. That would be nice. Like, that would actually feel really real. Would be like exactly what you said. Like, hey, I'm sorry I put you in this position that you even would have to bring this up. Like, that alone is not right. But the text I got was, hey, I need to be better. So him making about himself.
Yeah,
I
if
need
you
to be
haven't
better.
acted with empathy towards someone, how about not starting everything with the word I? How about you?
Right.
How are you?
Me.
Yeah. How are you? Tell me what you're feeling. To not focus on themselves with the I, me, I stuff. Well, I didn't even want to marry your mother, and I didn't take I wasn't responsible
Oh,
for this, and she blamed that, and so on. And it's all I, me, I statements.
right.
And holy crap! I mean, how about focusing on you
Me.
and what you're feeling?
I agree.
So, magic, perfect, ideal response. Script the perfect parent response. What would it be?
Like, nothing. I mean, I could exercise my mind here, but like nothing comes to mind I
And
feel like I'm in.
I agree
I'm
with
in.
you. I'm just sorry. Go ahead.
Should you want me to like exercise my mind here? I mean,
No, it's a philosophy
honest.
conversation. What would exercising your mind have to do with anything? Ooh, sarcasm. That's all about me. Well, no, I honestly think it's impossible at this point for your parents to do anything right. And not because necessarily they're,
Right.
bad people or terrible people. It's just kind of impossible. Do you want to know
It's
why?
because it's not their nature. It's like not them.
Well,
It's like not their
even if we were
character.
to take that off the table, even if they were to take that off the table, let's say
Sure.
that they had some perfect response that really soothed you and helped you and comforted you and made you feel seen and understood and empathized with and all of that, warm bath, cuddly stuff that should be happening in relationships. If they were able, let's say that over the next week they did all of that, do you know how terrible
Yeah.
that would be?
Why do you say that?
It would be awful. I think, let me make the case, and obviously if I'm wrong, tell me.
Please. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it would be terrible. Because if your parents had the capability of doing that, why wouldn't they doing it for decades? If they can just switch that on and be empathetic, kind, warm people, why on earth wouldn't they have done that before?
It's a very valid, philosophically congruent, honest.
Again, so
Yeah, that makes sense.
you're saying, hey, you guys don't speak Japanese. Japanese being empathy, right? You guys don't speak Japanese. And they say, oh shit, and then they start speaking fluent Japanese.
Shinkwang King Tong Kong.
Yeah, whatever's going on, right? Hopefully we didn't offend too many Japanese listeners with that.
Sorry, Japanese.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, sorry.
But it's if they have not really shown much empathy for decades, and then you say, hey, I kind of need some empathy, and then they turn it on,
Right.
then it's like,
yeah.
you guys don't speak Japanese, and that really hurts me. And then they start speaking Japanese the next day fluently. It's like, well, if you could speak Japanese, and I really need you to speak Japanese for the last couple of decades, why didn't you speak Japanese until I asked you to? Whereas if they say,
Yeah.
oh man, okay, whew, so you want us to speak Japanese, you want us to speak empathy, whew, okay, well, we don't speak that, so how long does it take to learn Japanese? Years, right? Years and years and years to become fluent in Japanese, especially if you're including the kanji writing and all, right? So there's nothing they can do in the
what
short
writing?
run, because the more quickly they spool up or spin up their empathy platters, the more it's incomprehensible that they didn't do it before. Whereas if they say, oh my
Right.
God, we have to start learning empathy from scratch, I mean, how long is it going to take for people in their, 50s, 60s or whatever? How long is it going to take for them to learn empathy at this advanced age, assuming that it's even possible?
I agree. No,
And let
it
me
makes
give you one
100%
other analogy
Yep.
just to hammer the point home. Sorry if this is redundant, but it would be like
Please.
if you were really upset because your father was in a wheelchair your whole childhood and you said, Dad, you got to get out of this wheelchair. If you're like, oh, shit. And then you just got up and out of his wheelchair. Wouldn't that be kind of like, what? If you could just get up out of your wheelchair, what the fuck were you doing in a wheelchair for the last 30 years?
Yeah, of course. And of course it would be worse because all the shit that happened
Right.
and all the effects it had.
Right. So if they suddenly burst out of their whatever selfish shell and start really focusing on you and put their own egos aside and aren't defensive and aren't manipulative and just focus on what's best for you, it's like, well, if you can do this, why didn't you? If you could just do this when I asked you to, why didn't you do it when I needed you to?
Sure.
If you were a tennis player and you just desperately wanted to play with your father and he said, I can't play tennis, I don't know tennis, I can't play tennis. And then, when you're 20, you get really mad at him. And then he says, fine, we'll play tennis. And then he's fantastic at it. It'd be like, what? If you're really good at tennis, why didn't we play tennis? Anyway, so again, I'm not trying to sort of say everyone's the same, although dysfunctional people tend to be kind of copy-paste. They tend to be kind of the same. But it is very much like with my parents, it's like there was no movement towards any kind of empathy. And I realized that I was trying to talk people into regrowing arms. If I talk to my mother long enough, her eyes will change color and she'll become a foot taller. It's like, nope, she is who she is. Now, maybe she had choices in the past. It doesn't really matter, but she doesn't have choices now. So again, we'll see, but you'll see. I won't be there, although I'm happy to talk again. But
Yeah.
I think if they're going to start trying to develop genuine empathy, which they did not have for each other, which they did not have for their children from all the stories I remember from like yesterday, and which they haven't had for you as an adult. If they were to say, we are deficient in empathy, we are going to try and learn empathy when we don't have the brain structure for it. I mean, learning empathy is way harder than learning Japanese, and Japanese is 5+ years of full-time study.
Why is it harder?
Because let's say that for some reason, let's say I had to learn Japanese. Well, I don't have any moral problems based on not knowing Japanese in the past. So I can just learn Japanese. I would consider it a drag. I'm very happy to have gone through my life without having to learn another language because it's very time consuming, and I'd much rather do philosophy in the language that I'm native in and pretty good at. So
Sure.
what would happen is if I had to learn Japanese, I would view it as a drag. I would buckle down and do it, right? I mean, we all do our taxes and shit like that. But what I would do is I wouldn't have any guilt or shame at not knowing Japanese before. And it wouldn't be like, well, my lack of Japanese really harmed my child or my children. And learning empathy means recognizing how selfish you've been for 50+ years. Or let's say, even as adults, right? Let's just say 30, 40 years. And that it's harmed your children. And that it's harmed your capacity to pair bond. And that it's made you a liar and you've been exploitive. Like the moral harm that comes to you like a tsunami from turning and looking back at your selfish life is brutal. This is why it's so hard for people to learn empathy later on in life. I have seen it. I don't know that it's universal, but it does seem to be the case that people who try to learn empathy later in life become suicidal. I'm not saying this is true of your parents. Obviously, I don't know, right? I don't know the degree of empathy they do or don't have. It doesn't seem very high, but whatever, right? But what I mean is that if you were to look back and you were to say, my selfishness and blindness has caused massive harm to the most innocent people in society and in my environment, and I've lived a life of selfish hedonism, and it's really damaged children, and my, one child became a drug addict, and whatever else happened to their other kids and all of that, and oh yeah, I had that guy, the black fellow, the second husband, he was around. Oh, sorry,
I didn't mean to complete your sentence for you, but
what did I got that right, didn't I? I think
you did.
Okay,
Yes, yeah, the black husband.
I was trying to remember from yesterday. It wasn't that long ago. It shouldn't be this big test. Like, those many moons ago, those 24 hours ago. But
no problem.
so I mean, that I brought that guy in, and he harmed my children through his indifference and hostility, and he did unspeakably horrible things to me. And it took my child to say, maybe you should leave him, whatever. Like that's horrible. When you become a dad, like if you do something that hurts your kid, oh man, it's horrendous. It's horrendous how much it tears at you. It's like you close the door on your dog's tail, and your dog is like, it's like, oh my god, it tears you up. And that's just it's horrible. And that's just one thing, one incident. And if you've continually ignored what's best for your children and focused only on what you want and what's best for you, then learning empathy exposes the horror of all of your prior selfishness. That doesn't happen when you learn Japanese.
So self-protection causes you to essentially never develop.
Well, and the other question is one of incentives, which is if the pain and sadness of your children isn't enough for you to change when they were little, why would it be enough to change when they're older?
Yeah.
Like when your parenting job is done and, 12 years in the rear view or whatever. I mean, your sadness and isolation and loneliness and rejection and, right, they were brutal with each other in the divorce. To just take one of many examples, they were brutal with each other during the divorce. And so your and your siblings' sadness or unhappiness or misery or fear or anxiety during this brutal divorce was not enough for them to say, you know what, we have to stop fighting. It's terrible for the children. We have to stop fighting. It's terrible for the children. Well, no, they wanted to fight. They wanted to be right, and it didn't matter what you wanted. What mattered was what they wanted, however petty and vengeful it may have been at the time. And if it wasn't enough for them to change when you were little, and they had accumulated much less damage to their conscience, what would be their incentive now? If they were to truly develop empathy, I don't even know how they'd get out of bed in the morning.
Right. Oh, you're right. And like when I was a child, like if that wasn't enough, I was a freaking cute little 5-year-old, 10-year-old, whatever. Like I was a ball of love and like maybe a little a little rascal sometimes, but for the most part, like just want to have a good
Well, should
time.
you
Like,
want that in a son? Could you
yeah,
imagine
I mean,
some
I want to play and
hyper-compliant
be.
little Lord Fauntleroy? Oh,
Hell
Father,
no,
what could I
no.
possibly do to advance the interests of society today? It's like, whoa, kid, you're freaking me out.
What kind of
Go push over a
weirdo?
rock or something. Go chase
Yeah, let's
a cloud of birds or something. What are you doing?
let's like wrestle and
Yeah,
freaking
go break
stab each
something.
other.
Go break
Yeah, let's
something.
break some stuff. Like let's break a toe, break a finger,
Yeah, stop not
just
taking
do
risks.
crazy stuff.
Yeah. You need that.
Yeah, like you would want that. You would want because I mean, that's masculine. That's like that shows. I mean, those are all the characteristics of somebody has power and like is capable of. I mean, how did people explore the seven seas and explore the countries and conquest and fight
And
battle like
overthrow
all?
tyrannies and, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, overthrow evil tyrannies and like all that comes from just in some ways like
It's like that, isn't it, Alice Cooper song,
uncontrollable.
Raise a Little Hell, Raise a Little... There's some song, I think it's in the 70s, Raise a Little Hell. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't comfortable raising a little hell.
Right. Yes.
And how do you feel after the smoke cleared from these conversations as a whole?
You know, I like of course, like as we're having a conversation, sometimes like thoughts pop up. And like I think like you mentioned tennis. I remember playing tennis with my dad growing up. And like I remember I loved tennis. I loved that experience. And so like I have these great positive experiences as well. But I think that like the thought that came after that was like, I don't think that's because him. I think that's because I just like tennis. I enjoyed playing tennis with somebody. And for that moment, I wasn't being abused. Like I wasn't being verbally assaulted or like for that moment, it was kind of chill.
Well, and I
Um,
want to just spend a moment on that because it's really important because it
please.
feels kind of confusing, right? Like I have these good memories too. I have good
Right.
memories. I don't really have good memories with my father, but I definitely have good memories with my mother. And I didn't see my father that much, so that's nothing particular to him. But that's called the coincidence of once. So the challenges in parenting aren't when you want to do something that your kid also wants to do. Now, the challenges of all relationships aren't when you exactly want to do the same thing because there's never any problems or conflict, right? So if you want to
Right.
play tennis and your father wants to play tennis and you go and play tennis and you have a good time, that doesn't mean that he's a good father because that's what he
Right.
wants to do.
Right.
The challenge in parenting is to find the pluses in things you don't want to do in the moment. So, for example, my daughter is a big fan of late night walks. And so sometimes it's like midnight, I want to go to bed. And she's like, do you want to go for a walk? Do I want to go for a walk? Nope. But we go for the walk and I find a way to enjoy it. I don't sort of go for the walk resentfully, right?
Right.
Like, fine, I'll go for the stomp along, and, because if I'm going to go for the walk, then I'll go for the walk. Every now and then, my wife will say, I need to buy some stuff at the mall. Do you want to go? Now, am I a big mall guy? Oh, no, not really. But my wife wants to go. I'll find a way to go and enjoy it. Now, if I desperately want to go to the mall and she desperately wants to go to the mall, there's no problem. And not that there's a big problem if we don't have a coincidence of once, but a lot to do with a relationship is finding ways to enjoy things that you don't want to do in the moment. So when your father
Oh God.
wanted to play tennis and you wanted to play tennis, you had fun.
Sure.
The challenge is when you want to do something and your father doesn't want to do it, then what happens, right? Like when your father was in a bad mood and you were 4 or 5 and wanted to play and he got kind of snappy and grouchy. So the problem is the unpredictability. Is he going to want to do it? Is he not going to want to do it? It depends entirely on his moods and not your needs.
I agree. I'm going to add something to that. Like, I remember growing up, or even in early adult years, like, he would, just as an example, he would promise, like, we'll go do this thing, or we'll take this trip, or, he'd promise something that, of course, he knew we wanted or liked or whatever. Because he wanted us, he wanted that. In that moment, he wanted to be able to say that, commit to that, and then later on, it would never happen. He would never do it because he didn't want to do it in that moment. And so he would essentially tell us, "Hey, we'll do this thing," because it felt good in the moment, and he wanted to say that. And then later on, it's like no accountability, no fulfillment on his word, no, yeah, no fulfillment on his commitment. And then because he wanted it, and
Yeah, so he felt good in the moment,
exactly
making the promise, but then when it came to fulfill the promise, he didn't want to do it, so then he just looks to get out, looks for a way out. And it's a funny thing because it sounds like your parentage is just a whole series of doing things you don't want to do. So I'm not trying to say that, but when my daughter was younger, especially in the winter, like Canada's cold and it's not that much fun to do stuff outside with little kids in the cold, at least not too much. It's a lot of bundling up and stuff, and then they got to pee and blah, blah, blah. So we would go to these indoor play centers. And do I want to go to indoor play centers as an individual? Absolutely not.
No.
Any more than I say, oh, no, I would say to my wife, hey, I know we've watched the movie Frozen 20 times before. You want to make it 21? No.
That sounds terrible.
Here's the funny thing, and I agree with you, it sounds terrible, but it's not.
But, okay, because you enjoy being with them, and you enjoy them being happy, and you like them, and you care about them.
Yes, so...
And when you want to go on a walk with your daughter, you end up enjoying it because she's there, and you value the relationship. Like,
yeah, and I'm also looking at the long term. She's getting older. She'll be 18 this year. First of all, I'm still thrilled that she wants to go on walks with me, which is nice. But also, I say, later on in life, will I ever look back and say, I took too many walks with my daughter?
Interesting.
Never.
Yeah. No, those are beautiful times.
Never. And so I don't look back, like when we went to the play centers, we had fun. But I didn't have fun because I was going to the play center. Otherwise, I'd be some weird guy who went to play centers when I'm pushing 60, right? So my play center is the gym. So I didn't go to the play center because I wanted to go to the play center. My daughter and I once had this epic Monopoly game that went on for almost 3 weeks. And it was great fun. In fact, we were lending money to each other at the end just to keep it going. Now, do I love playing Monopoly? Like when my wife have an evening free, do I say, let's play Monopoly? No. We don't play Monopoly. But it was great fun playing Monopoly with my daughter. And that's what I mean by, with your parents, do they take pleasure in something because you take pleasure in it, and therefore it's fun for them? So when did I stop going to play centers? When my daughter stopped wanting to go to play centers. And that's good. Because, parenting, you have these phases, and then you get a little tired of them, and then your kid moves on. If my daughter was almost 18 and still wanted to go to play centers, I would view that as a big negative. And so, with your parents, when you say, I had a lot of fun playing tennis with my dad, my mother has had she came from a family that was very literate. One of my uncles won a prize for poetry, like a national prize for poetry in Germany, and another one wrote a very well-received and famous book about the history of trade unionism, and I mean, very literate people. And so when I started writing books, my mother was eager to read them and to help me edit them. Now, that's not because she cared about me in particular, but because she liked working on books. And so your father enjoyed playing some tennis. He enjoyed playing some tennis with you. That doesn't mean that he was empathetic towards you. There was a coincidence of once. In the same way that I wouldn't judge my mother entirely by her eagerness to help me with books, which she did. I would say she was particularly helpful, but it was nice to have someone really interested in my work. It wasn't like my friends were lining up to read. I had one friend, when I published my first book of poetry, said, "I'm awed, cowed, bowed. They're fantastic," and it was very exciting for me. But most of my friends were not very much into my writing.
Right.
But my mother was, and listen, that gave me some fuel. I'm not going to kid. She took it seriously and all of that. But that was a coincidence of once. That was not. That was not empathy and connection. That wasn't my mother saying, "Well, I'm not particularly into what he's doing, but I'm excited to do it with him because he's excited by it," if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, and that lines up 100%. Dad loved going to my baseball games. He showed up to baseball games. Dad doesn't care about my band and my music. Never asks about the band. Never asks about the music. Never asks, like, if it's not aligned with what he wants, his interest, I don't get any, like, there's no relationship around that. There's no anything. So is that, I mean, that's uniquely, like, if I have a friend, right, and they have a certain interest that I don't like or I don't care for, they're into some board game. I don't like to play board games. I'd prefer to spend my time other ways. Like, if it's a friend, it's perhaps, I mean, some level of empathy, perhaps, maybe going along, playing just to try it out
I mean,
and
yeah, you can
experience it
try
with
it.
them.
Yeah, so you can try it, but it's a different matter between friendships, because with friendships, with friendships, you're choosing people based upon compatible values already. But with children, you're just rolling the dice and you don't know what you're going to get. You might get a kid who's really extroverted or introverted or really into painting or drawing or sports or I don't know, whatever, right? So you kind of have to meet your kids where they are, and you're not pre-filtering them. I mean, you choose to some degree the capacities and maybe even values of your children by who you choose to mate with, right? So you have, if you mate with a very selfish person, then every aspect of personality is influenced by genes, so you might end up with more selfish kids. But with kids, you have to meet them where they are, whereas with friends, you choose them based on who they are already and who you are already. So it's a different kind of thing.
That's amazing, man. Like, that makes so much sense. So it's almost like, as a parent, that's a unique role where you're bringing this person into the world. It's an individual who's going to have their own things that they're going to care about and stuff. And so it's a very unique job where you it makes sense. You must, if you want to look back on your life and not have regrets about, like you said, you won't regret going on walks with your daughter. Like, uh, basically, what you said makes sense. What you said makes perfect sense.
Good.
Because we don't pick our parents.
I'm still not quite sure where you are emotionally. I'm sorry if you mentioned it more and I missed it, but I just want to make sure I really get that. Where are you based upon these amazing conversations?
Oh goodness. I just know I don't want to talk to them. I know I feel tired. Like, I feel like I just took a nap in the sun a little earlier and it felt necessary. I just feel like I want to rest. I do feel a little afraid. Like, I feel afraid. I just have, like, this, like, what even is life if I don't have parents that, like, I'm in communication with? Like, what even is life at this point? I suppose that's kind of like
What do you mean, what is
emotionally.
life? I'm not disagreeing. I'm just curious what you mean.
I guess I'm just like, what is going on? I don't know. Like, it's like I know what I'm doing is the right thing, but also it's like I've never done this, so everything's just kind of new. I'm in like a new ground, I feel like, and it feels very real. And like I said, I think there's like a very subtle, like, I don't know if it's fear, or if it's just like I feel more alive. Um, but I just know I don't want to talk to them. I just want to rest a little and just keep life going, like keep working on my business. I don't want to like let up off the gas on things that I have going on in my life because I enjoy them. I enjoy my business. I enjoy playing music, and um, I am exhausted. I feel
Oh, it's crazy tiring.
it's so, dude.
It is crazy tiring.
I was like rage. I was like, I've never raged emotionally for a full hour, and I pretty much did that yesterday. And I was walking. I was pacing the whole time. Like my legs were like literally. It felt like they were about to like cramp up all night,
Mm.
but they didn't. It was just, so I'm like physically, emotionally, mentally, like I'll just like catch myself like staring into space. Not gonna lie, like staring into space, and then I'm like, okay, I want to play it. Come back to reality. I enjoy playing guitar. I want to play the guitar. Let's play the guitar. But I think part of that is just mental and physical exhaustion, and also just like, okay, like some shit's going on in my life right now. So this is, whew. So obviously thoughts are popping up with that as well.
Do you write music?
I have, I'm in a, I enjoy it. It's definitely a good outlet. Perhaps it'd be a good time to write a song, I think for sure. But I mainly just play guitar. I like progressing and like, developing my skills in guitar.
Yeah, and listen, I don't know, obviously, but you may find yourself um, quite, um, you may find yourself with a wellspring of creativity and power as the result of contacting these emotions. The more deeply we contact our emotions, the more widely we connect with others.
Man,
So,
yesterday after, um, I think you're right. And uh, yesterday I thought, you know what, it would be a damn good time to like start writing a few songs, and bring out the notebook. And then also I felt so connected, bro. Yesterday after I talked to you, and then had those conversations, I had an appointment for work. And it was I had a great time. Like I felt very conversational. I felt connected, and um, again, a little exhausted. So dealing with a little bit of that as well. But um, where do I go from here, man? Where do I go from here? Like, um, I like your show. Like, I feel like I do get insights in listening. Um, I know I don't want to talk to my parents right now. I uh, I think it'd probably be good to. What do you do as a philosopher, Stephen? You like how do you build a stronger frame of like empathy and your courage? How do you build your courage? Do you feel like do you just read Plato all day, or Aristotle, or like
if I did, I wouldn't be talking to this, right? Yeah, I mean
sure.
it's a big question. I think the thing that sort of kept me going, and hopefully it will help you, is generally the idea that it's not who's in your life that is the most important, it's who's not in your life. And one of the things that I found was that after I didn't have bad or dysfunctional people in my life, I got to have, and it was almost like magic, like, those guys who can do these bird whistles and then just birds appear, and there's a kind of weird thing that people can do. And when I got the bad, negative, or dysfunctional people at a distance, doesn't necessarily mean out of my life completely, but I sort of got some reasonable distance from them, then it was almost like something half miraculous changed. and good people just started showing up. And you want to, it sounds like, I think, you want to get married, you want to have kids and all of that, and you want to get married to a good woman, and you want to have kids with a good mom for your kids and all that kind of stuff. And right now, I would doubt that those women would be much in your environment or in your vicinity, right? I remember you saying that you don't have a lot of friends, and the high quality stuff is not really going on. But if you like when you go through the process of having good rational boundaries in your life and all that kind of stuff, then good people are looking for you just as much as you're looking for good people, and good people need your virtue just as much as you need the virtue of good people. And I think what will happen is when you sort of cross this desert, then you get to this other world. Like, I don't live in a world where there are dysfunctional people. I mean, obviously they're occasionally around. I got to deal with, the normies from time to time. But in terms of the relationships where I have a choice in, pretty functional, pretty positive, pretty philosophical, pretty happy people. And it's a real godsend. And so in terms of like, where do you go? You're looking at isolation, right? If you have better relationships or you have a standard for better relationships, then you are looking at, or you have the concern for, and I, completely makes sense to me, but you have the feeling that if you don't have these people as much in your life, you've got no one. And that is a very frightening thing. And it also makes sense as to why you would feel that way, because that is the feel. That's why people stay in bad relationships, because they feel they'll be alone without them. But what I think it's important to start thinking about is, how do you look from the outside to somebody who has really good morals and values? Now, of course, if you were still embedded, let's say, with a dysfunctional family situation, then somebody from the outside would say, he's a nice guy, smart, sexy, whatever, ambitious, talented, and all that kind of stuff. But, I can't spend the next 30 years with his parents.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that if you look at who's coming rather than who's leaving, that is what you can live for and move towards.
Yeah. I've definitely done that. Like, in the past, I know the feeling of like, okay, I'm taking the leap of faith. I've left a church, and there's been times where I was isolated and I didn't know what was next. There wasn't like people that just popped up right after. So that does make sense. And I just had a thought, like, if in the future, I don't know, I don't think there's any question about like mom. I don't want her anywhere near my kids. There's like no shred of, I feel like that one's like the coffin was closed. Like, um, with my dad, I just had a thought. I'm like, you know what? Maybe with our supervision, like he could visit and like be around our kids. But then I thought, I'm like, is that for me? Like, is that for me or is that for him? And I think that would be for him. Like, it's not like something I really want. Anyway, I was just like kind of thinking out loud there.
Yeah, I mean, your parents, if they're going to start really focusing on empathy and connection, then your parents are embarking on a very long and challenging journey that's going to require some therapy. It's going to require a lot of self-work. It's going to be a lot of stress and tears and loss. And I mean, I think it's worth it, but then I've never done any particular bad harm in the world that I have to kind of live with, if that makes sense. So if they're going to go down that road, and my guess is they won't, but there's no crystal ball. It's just generally going on the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And so if they are going to go down this road, then they're going to be destabilized for quite some time. And it is going to be incredibly hard for them to make the kind of progress that's going to matter in the kind of time frame that you're looking for. So I mean, if I'm in your shoes, I'm like, if they want to talk, I'm happy to listen and see whether they are really going to commit to really developing the kind of empathy that is going to serve you and your future wife and your future children.
What would that look like? I mean, what would be KPIs that you're looking for if you're open to hearing them? And well, I mean, you mentioned earlier, here, I'll just let you take over. And what would you look for?
I would look for humility. I would look for a collapse of the public-facing certainty. I would look for a collapse in ego and vanity. And I would look for somebody willing to be instructed. And also, I would look for somebody who was no longer going to say, kid, it's still your job to fix me. It's your job to tell me what I can do. It's your job to tell me what I need to do. I would not, in particular, view that. I would say, looking for, if my mother had said, gosh, I really, the memories are coming fast and furious. I treated you horribly as a child, and it was not your fault at all. I was in a war. These bad things happened. I need to take that. I don't want you to be left with any kind of impression that I did what I did because of something you did. And I don't want you to feel that ever, ever. And I know that I have done that, and that's unexcusable, but I just don't want you to feel that. I don't want to put any burden on you for fixing me, so I am going to go to therapy, and I'm going to make sure that the therapist knows what it is that I am going to be working on, what it is I need to work it on, what it is that you need, because I don't want to be in your life if I can't provide direct value to you, and I know that I can't do that at the moment. I also know that I don't even know how to make it better, but I'm desperate to figure it out. So I'm going to go to therapy. But the last thing I want you to do is think that anything that I did had anything to do with a fault in you, because it wasn't. And it didn't.
Well,
I didn't get that. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that it's I wouldn't put a lot of money on it, but again, there's free will.
Right.
So it's free will. So who knows, right?
That would be what it looks like, though. Yeah, that would be what it kind of looks like. You got it. Fair. Very fair.
All right, bro. Well, I will wrap things up here. How's the call been for you? I mean, I guess it's a 2 for 2, right? Two calls, 2 days. How are you doing overall? Is there anything else that I can add at the end?
Thank you. No, thank you. I'm just, despite all the questions and fear of leaping, and I do know that this is right, and it honestly feels amazing. Yesterday, honestly, I felt like I was taking power back. I just felt like for some reason it was man, I just completely, that was a life changing couple of hours specifically when I called them. And of course, our phone call led into that. So I appreciate it deeply, and appreciate the combo, man. I really do.
All right. Well, I hope that you will keep in touch, and I absolutely wish you all the best. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed for a breakthrough with your parents.
Thank you, Steph.
All right. All the best, brother. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.